Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the rest of you. We are back after a holiday weekend with another episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live. I'm your host, Q. I can't even say my own name. That's how much fun I was having on the holiday weekend. And yes, I'm coming to you yet again from my mother's basement, and I'm joined by my co-host, P. How goes it, P?
It goes quite well. I've been, making some tweaks to my setup. I'm super excited. I'll be inevitably doing some needless picture-in-picture action during this session today. So, get ready. I'm excited for this conversation with Sid.
And yeah,
What's
we
up?
are going to be chatting with none other than Captain Sid himself, the motorcycle bandit coming to the Bitcoin meetup near you. Captain Sid, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I haven't been on the motorcycle very much the last 2 or 3 days. I'm finally relaxing for a couple days, not doing 200 miles day by
Is your
day,
butt
which
really sore? I don't
the
ride a motorcycle, so I don't know. Like, what gets sore? Like, is it like the
so
inside of your legs a little bit, or just your ass
it
just get?
totally depends on the motorcycle. I have a dirt bike in Asia, and that thing, everything is sore because it's vibrating like crazy and the seat's super narrow. But the Harley I'm riding here, it's like a couch on wheels. I mean, it's so comfortable. So really, it's just kind of my back because I'm sort of sitting up without a backrest. So if I do that for 3, 4 hours, that's kind of tiring and just mentally tiring because you got to think about you're sitting basically on a rocket with two patches about that big connecting you to the earth and saving your life. So if you screw up, that's it. So you always have to be on. You're always balancing, you're always thinking. So your mind is just like go, 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 go. And it's tiring. It's definitely tiring. It's way more tiring than a car. Because a car, you can just put your knee on the steering wheel and eat stuff and drink
Whoa, whoa! It
whatever.
takes a
But
lot of
you
skill for me to use my left knee while I roll a joint and drive down the 405. It takes a
exactly
lot of skill.
try rolling a joint when you're going 80 miles an hour. You got that wind coming at you. Like you can't do anything.
Okay, I got a
You can't
stupid
do
Is
question.
it
anything.
Like, I've
possible to
always
be
wanted
more
a
free? I think
motorcycle.
the answer is no.
I've genuinely been talked out of like going and getting my motorcycle license by so many people, but like eventually, maybe one day. Curious, like I'm a podcast when I drive kind of guy. Like, what are you listening to? What are you doing other than trying to not die while you're driving around the country?
And before we go into that, Sid, can you give us for the audience, the elevator pitch of who you are, what you're about, and how you decided to strap yourself to a rocket and travel across America?
Yeah, so I go by Sid. I've been following and into Bitcoin since maybe 2016, 2017, just slowly going down the rabbit hole. There were a couple experiences that kind of led me deeper down the rabbit hole and helped me go around the shitcoin horseshoe, as Corey Clipson would say, from Bitcoin back around. I looked at Ethereum and whatnot and was interested in that. I was going to crypto conferences and then came right back to Bitcoin probably in 2019. I worked for an exchange for a while and I've been doing just writing in the space, writing content. I created a website about finance called whatismoney.info that's all about finance, but from a Bitcoin perspective. So I've been really interested in Bitcoin and sort of the world surrounding it for a couple of years now. And I've been living abroad for the last 2.5 years. And during that time, I watched the rise of Bitcoin meetups in the US and this sort of in-person Bitcoin culture, which when I came into Bitcoin and because of my experiences at the exchange, I always had this perception like you should never talk about Bitcoin in public. You should never put your face out there. And while I still understand why that's useful, that's not my personality at all. Like I want to talk about Bitcoin. I want to be open about it. I want to talk to people who are curious and help them understand why I'm so into it and have fallen down the rabbit hole. So that's just not, doesn't really jive with my personality. And I saw all these Bitcoin meetups popping up all across the country. And the funny thing is the most energy is not, I'm not seeing it even on the strip, but when I was on Twitter seeing these pop up, it's not from New York or San Francisco or LA, and nothing against those places, but the most energy is coming from these small cities and towns all across America. So I thought I got to see what this is all about. I want to, come back to the US and do some kind of road trip. And I fell in love with riding motorcycles while I was abroad. So thought, how I'm going to buy a big American motorcycle and do a road trip and just connect the dots through all of these different meetups. And it's worked pretty well so far. I mean, I don't have to drive more than 2 or 3 days before I hit another city with a meetup. They're not that far, and there are more and more cropping up, it seems, week by week. So my goal with this trip is to link up to different Bitcoin meetups to basically hear from Bitcoiners about what brought them to Bitcoin and try to get a sense for what it means to be a Bitcoiner and someone who is a part of this community, because I'm starting to realize that it's much more than just a common interest in this money protocol. There's much more that unites Bitcoiners. And I want to bring attention to these different meetups. And that's part of why I brought on sponsors. So I have sponsors for the ride. You can see them on the hat. Swan Bitcoin, Unchained Capital, Bitcoin Magazine is one of them, and Upstream Data. And they're really helping me to bring this message to a wider audience and help more people discover that there are Bitcoin meetups around, whether you're into Bitcoin and you're looking for Bitcoiners, or you don't know what it is, but you are having trouble learning from the internet. You can go to a Bitcoin meetup and people will sit with you till 4 a.m. and talk to you about Bitcoin, and you can understand what this is all about. So I want to bring that meetup scene more to the fore and help people understand that there are meetups everywhere. And if there aren't, it is really not that hard to get one started. And you don't have to be an event planner or organizer. You can literally just get a couple people together at a bar and start there and keep going. So yeah, happy to talk about any and all of that, but I'm about halfway into the tour. So I started in Miami at the Bitcoin conference, went to Texas,
The best
across the
Bitcoin
South.
meetup, full stop.
Sorry?
I said the Bitcoin conference being the best Bitcoin meetup, full stop.
Definitely the
interrupted.
biggest, I will say that.
Whoa. You trying to fight? Are this early in the morning, Sid?
Careful. Q.
We're
Easy.
midday, yo. I already
Easy.
warmed up. I already did some Muay Thai in the park, so bring it.
Sid
All right.
is a
Look,
full-time
all I'm
baller.
saying is I got a former MMA fighter who I will tap in and fight you instead of me.
Oh, you fucking cheater. That's not how that works.
Chris is going to fight for me then.
No, Alex McShane is my champion, or whatever they used in
shit.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, my understanding, Sid, is you tried to fight Alex McShane. You were like, bro, I will take you down anytime, anywhere, any place.
Yes, so there
True or also
really
true?
is truth to this. I tried to meet up with Alex during the conference because I saw something about some post about doing martial arts or whatever. And I said, does anyone want to do Muay Thai? And he responded to it. And we just ended up never finding a time. I messaged him like on Sunday morning when everyone was leaving and he was busy. So we never made it work, but our plan was to spar on the beach and go head to head. So yeah, we almost saw that for real.
Are you serious? Sparring on the beach, like fucking Top Gun style? Shirts
Yeah.
off, oiled up.
Oh, totally.
Just like Krav Maga /
In the
Muay Thai.
short, if you ever seen Muay Thai shorts, they look like a diaper when they fight. So you're basically wearing a diaper. That's it. And gloves.
That
Yeah, we were
sounds
going to
extremely...
Sounds very
go at it.
homoerotic.
toss each other into the ocean. Yeah, it's going to
Yeah.
be beautiful. Would have been great content for the tour, but maybe I'll
It's
see him
not too
again on the
late,
trip.
man. It's not too
Alex is
late.
messaging us on the side,
Alex
and
is literally like in our group chat right now. Like, I got him. Like, yo, I'll destroy.
I'll
Captain
tear him
Sid.
apart.
He's
He also
talking-
said, "Don't forget
he's
the
talking
oil."
a lot of shit, man.
Yeah.
He's calling you scrawny right now.
Wow. Some of the
Nah,
best
he didn't
Muay
say
Thai
any of that.
fighters
He
are
was super
super
excited.
thin.
Fully kidding.
he just man, the conference was insane. We were literally, we get these like urgent alerts at like 11 p.m. They would be like, everybody assemble in the conference hall, we have to make these bags or put chairs up, and like everyone in the company was just like running around trying to like get everything together. So by the end of the conference, everybody was completely exhausted.
Yeah, it totally felt like that. I was exhausted as an attendee, so I can't imagine what it was like for you guys or Alex, like on that news desk all day. Like I would have been.
I was rehashing it with a
burnt
friend
to a
over the
pulp.
weekend. I was like, I think the 3 night, not counting the night before Sound and Money Fest, because I was a dick and I just said fuck it and slept in and missed a lot of team meetings. Those 3 nights, though, I think I slept a cumulative of 7 hours, including 1 hour the night before industry day. So that was really fun and smart.
Sounds
I'm
like a
impressed,
lot,
dude.
actually.
We
Yeah.
are we are lobbing questions from the chat. I want to remind everyone before we dive in deeper. We're talking about the Bitcoin conference. Bitcoin 2023 tickets are on sale right now, so be sure to go ahead and lock in those tickets now. Prices are going to be going up, I believe, in 2 weeks. We'll have some announcements coming out around that time as well. Look, I can't tell you where, I can't tell you when, but I can tell you that you had to fly and take time off last time you came to the conference. So you're probably gonna have to do that again. So just buy it now because the tickets are cheap. Like, go tell your boss, and your boss is gonna be really happy that you saved them like thousands of dollars. And in 2 weeks, when you ask them for that raise at the end of the quarter, you can point to me like, yo, I saved you guys like a few grand. Boom, there you go. You're welcome. So lock in those tickets right now. Captain Sid, first audience question is, tell us about the Thai oil. I guess that's a thing.
Yeah, so it's called Naman Muay, which is like Muay Thai oil in Thai. And I don't know what the hell is in this stuff, but it's like a hot oil. You put it on your skin and it heats up. And Muay Thai fighters put it on before fights. Like, they'll use tons of this stuff and cover their entire body in it, to the point where you feel like your body's on fire, but you don't care because you're about to go in a ring and have elbows thrown at you. So kind of like numb to it, but it's supposed to like warm up your muscles and also help with recovery and stuff. So people swear by it. It smells really good too.
So do
Probably got
you
like it's probably got like capsaicin in it or something.
Yeah, I think it
Chili oil.
does.
I just imagine you like like pouring like a gallon of this stuff like all over you, just
Yeah.
all in your eyes and your mouth.
Don't
You're
get it
half
in your
blind.
eyes. Yeah.
It's
Do
like
not get it
what's
in your
that
eyes.
scene? Oh God, what's the movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme where everybody chants like "Kumate, Kumate"?
No idea.
Oh, it's a classic. How can you be
literally
a
just
fighter
Google
and not know this
Kumate?
movie?
Someone in our chat, go Google Kumate and find the answer for P. We'll
It's
send you
like
some stats.
it's a fucking classic. Anyway, there's a scene where like he's like fighting in like some like Thai ring, and he gets like the guy like throws glass in his eyes, and he's like and then he like channels his inner fighter and becomes a Super Saiyan and basically like breaks the guy's arms and
Senses him
limbs.
with his
Exactly.
bad senses or whatever.
Yeah, he
Jean-Claude
channels his inner
Van Damme
Bitcoiner
sense. Yeah.
and wins, as we all know. We eventually
Predicts
will.
the fiat collapse, and the guy falls over crying and says, "Thank you for saving me."
That's right. That's exactly what happens. You have seen this movie. I don't know why you lied to us
Yeah.
earlier. Tell us about cooking food on your motorcycle. When we hung out in Nashville, you had this stainless steel tin that was attached to your manifold, and you talked about using this as a way to actually like perfectly cook your steaks while riding.
Yeah, so it all started when I went to the Beef Initiative conference in Kerrville by this guy, Texas Slim, who is like bringing ranchers and Bitcoiners together, which I thought was just like a crazy cool concept. So I went to that, and Slim had talked about cooking meat while he's traveling, and how he brings a skillet and like a hot plate and plugs in it at the hotel. And so I thought, well, maybe I could do that. And, I could buy local steak as I go, but that's a lot of extra stuff to carry on the back of a motorcycle. It's super heavy. And so I talked to the chef at the Beef Initiative, and he was like, man, you got a motorcycle, like cook it on the engine. It's called manifold cooking. Look it up. And I looked it up, and sure enough, there's cookbooks on how to do this. They don't measure the time you should cook. They measure the miles on the highway you should cook a dish. So you have like a peach cobbler, and that's 70 miles on the highway at 65 miles an hour. That'll cook it perfectly. It's kind of like Dutch oven cooking, where you don't really know the temperature that you're cooking at, but if you leave it on for long enough, it'll cook. And it's not like boiling. It's not like a grill. My guess is it's somewhere around 150 degrees, because the steaks that I cook come out like a nice pink all the way through. And it's kind of like a sous vide. You got to have thin pieces of meat, but boy, it's so good. It slow cooks. I actually got some lamb from a Bitcoin homesteader who started with 3 sheep, and now he's got like 50 of them. And he gave me a couple lamb chops, and I cut them up and put them in that box. Incredible. Because it's like a sous vide almost, just a slow and low cook. So it's perfect for meat. Highly
was just
recommend it.
aghast.
My
Waist
stomach
heat. I mean,
hurts.
we
like,
do it with
thinking about all the
S9s.
uncooked food you ate. But that's
No,
just
no, no.
I
It
don't know.
totally works, dude. This
It's
is like a
perfectly
thing.
cooked.
Q.
I
It's
know it's a
perfectly cooked.
thing. I go camping. Like I've done very janky things to cook meat with lighters. For God's sakes, like I've done
sounds
disgusting,
unsafe.
vile things. But let me tell you, it is. But like this sounds like a lot of moving parts. Like you have already told us, like your focus is on not dying. That is a delicious looking steak.
That's cooked on a tailpipe for 3 hours.
So like I'm assuming that you can't like move a ton like while you're driving the car, or like do you just like prop the car? Like are you actually driving on the freeway is what I want to know.
Yeah, no, it's like a special little container that's strapped straight to. It's the manifold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
so
like
right
literally
as
like
the pipe
attaches.
comes right out.
Yeah, it's like a little
of the
cooking
engine.
vessel. It's like pre-made and everything. It was great.
So it's,
Yeah, I don't even think about it on the highway. It's not like I'm sitting there flipping burgers on the highway. Like it's in foil inside this box.
You
perfectly
can't flip the burgers.
sealed.
You're rolling the joints. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly. I can't do both.
I don't think I could ever ride a motorcycle just simply given how much I like to like smoke weed while I operate motor vehicles.
Yeah, you're fucked.
Probably
I've
shouldn't
seen
do
it done
that.
before. I've seen it done before.
Really?
Q.
Yeah.
Don't deprive us of your brilliant brain by smashing it into the road at 60 miles an hour. Sid, I want to ask you more about the your experience with meetups. So, what if you were going to categorize sort of the types of meetups that you experienced into broad categories? How would you articulate that?
Yeah. So it's a good question.
If that's even a reasonable question.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a really good question. So I think there's kind of 3 types that I've run into. There's the mega meetup that is very like focused on Bitcoiners and Bitcoin things, but is a stage talking to people. And then there's some time for mingling. Then there's sort of the educational meetups that kind of try to pull in normal people and talk to them about Bitcoin. And then there are the casual meetups, which is people at a bar, and those kind of vary in size. And that's where I think every meetup pretty much starts. But those are sort of people meet up at a bar and talk for 2 hours, and it's super, super casual. So the mega meetups I've found in like Nashville, for instance, all the bit devs are kind of like that. They're in big cities. They have a lot of people. They're organized. Bit devs in Austin was like an hour and a half of program content going through announcements. Then Houston is a presentation to energy people and Bitcoiners, and it's very Bitcoin. It's kind of educational. They try to bring in energy folks and talk to them about Bitcoin. But those are sort of the big mega meetups. They're almost like mini conferences. Then you have on the other side of the spectrum, the small casual ones. So like I went to a meetup that was 3 other people, and they're just getting started, but they were happy to have the meetup and happy to bring me in and chat for a couple hours and have coffee. It was like the middle of the day. And that goes all the way to like 30, 40 person meetups that are still just at a bar. They're casual, but they have regulars, and they kind of pull people in through social networks, as well as social networks as in people's friends, as well as Twitter and meetup.com. And sometimes random people will show up and become a part of that group or not. And then you have sort of the more educational meetups. So I think the best example of this is Charlotte. Charlotte's meetup is super focused on bringing in newbies. So they will have like shitcoiners come, but the organizers of that meetup are very focused on Bitcoin. They only talk about Bitcoin, and their thesis is kind of people come into the space for all different reasons. I came into it, through a bunch of other crypto shit, and now I'm Bitcoin only. So rather than telling those people to F off, like bring them in and show them like why that shitcoin really doesn't matter. And, if you want to gamble, you can go to the casino, but Bitcoin is really the only thing that actually matters. So they do a lot of programming to bring people into the space, book clubs and whatnot, to bring people into the fold and show them what Bitcoin is all about. But yeah, it's kind of all different types of meetups getting started. So it's really cool to see local Bitcoin organizers just innovate on what they want to do, the programming they want to do, how they want to run their local meetup or their region.
Of all the places you went, like you brought up Charlotte as a great example of like an educational Bitcoin meetup. Talk to us about maybe like one of the newer Bitcoin meetups that you got a chance to go to, and how through the conversation with some of these guys, like they or gals, they started this meetup.
Yeah, so the last one I went to was a good example of this in Benton Harbor, Michigan. So I'm actually going to do an interview with Daniel, one of the founders, but it started for him. I believe he drove all the way down to Nashville and went to a Nashville meetup. And this is actually the second time I've heard this story. He went to the Nashville meetup and he had some conversations there. And I think he was talking to like Marty Bent, and Marty told him like, you should start a meetup. And he's like, well, he's not a particularly social person. Like, I don't think I'm the person to really start this meetup. But he found another guy who's kind of his polar opposite in that regard, who's also a Bitcoiner, and put it together. And it's still small. They get anywhere from 5 to 15 people, but it's growing slowly. And I had a blast there. It felt more like a social club than a Bitcoin meetup. Like, we talked about Bitcoin, but we also talked about a lot of other interesting things and got to know each other and went to a bar with live music and hung out. So it kind of can start in a lot of different ways, and anyone can really start it. And I think this Daniel, he kind of discovered that, well, if I'm talking about Bitcoin, I'm a lot more social. It's a lot easier for me to talk about Bitcoin than to go to a random meetup or a random party or whatever. So I found that that's pretty true too. A lot of people are like, I don't go out that much or go to that many things, but I'll go to a Bitcoin meetup because I care about that. And I know people there are going to want to talk about things that I'm interested in. And it's Justin from Huntsville that had that same experience with Nashville. He went to the Nashville meetup and he was like, damn, I got to start something in Huntsville because I don't want to have to drive 2 hours up and down just to meet with other Bitcoiners. So he started his own in Huntsville.
That's valid. We got to shout out Mills, and I believe it's Rod,
Rod.
yeah, who are the ones spearheading all those Nashville Bitcoin meetups. So shout out, your hard work is clearly working, and you're spreading your seed all over the country, pun intended.
Yeah. I want to go a little bit further. The Nashville Bitcoin meetup is straight fire. Like, every month there's incredibly high quality conversation. Recently there was one on mining with like Harry Sodek of Grid and Matt Odell, and a bunch of other amazing people. Adam O. And there's a new space that we just got that's Bitcoin Park, and it's these like huge buildings. There's going to be a ton of really cool stuff coming out. So if anyone is listening and considering a trip down to Nashville, you should definitely time it around the Nashville Bitcoin meetup. Odell and I are going to be doing some workshops there. It's going to be dope.
I'm so annoyed that I'm missing the next Nashville meetup. Is all.
Yeah, you fucked up. You fucked up.
I don't fuck up. You guys didn't plan around my schedule. Anywho, what, like, you touch a little bit now, Sid, on like the conversations can be about Bitcoin, but sometimes they're not. Like, walk us through like the spectrum of conversations you're having, the people you're meeting. Like, what do they care about? Are you guys talking about the NBA playoffs because like it's been kind of shitty? Are you talking about the fact that Jerome Powell clearly has no idea what he's doing? Like, what is the topic of conversation when it's not Bitcoin related?
So a lot of it is, I kind of just ask people like, what do you do? Like, what is your life like? And then start to dig into that. So like in Benton Harbor, I stayed with actually a Bitcoiner who is a homesteader. He's got his own like farm, and he didn't start as a farmer. He grew up like outside west of Chicago in the suburbs and worked in the film industry for years, and then started doing this homesteading thing and just learned everything from YouTube and books and forums and whatnot. So we talked about, why he did that, what it means to do that, the techniques and how you raise animals and grow food and all that sort of thing. I mean, every meetup we talk about the most random stuff. It really just kind of goes off on different tangents depending on who I'm talking to and what they do. what I will say is like, I've not really talked about sports. I'm not super interested in sports, so maybe that's why. But I feel like a lot of people don't talk about, there's not a lot of conversation about just like the weather and random like small talk topics that most people talk about when they have this kind of meetup with random people. You just get directly to much more interesting stuff, I think, with Bitcoiners. And I think a lot of that has to do with like, I've noticed, and this probably won't come as a surprise, but most Bitcoiners have a very low time preference. And that means most people they're thinking long into the future and they're not really concerned about the topic du jour. They're concerned about how are things going to change in 3, 5, 10 years. So a lot of people who are working on a small business or they're doing some sort of little project, and that's kind of something I found really interesting about Bitcoiners in general. They always have something else going on that they're picking up and working on or interested in. It's not just like they watch sports and they go to work and, this like quote unquote normal life. They've always got something else going on. And if you can figure out what that is, conversations get super, super interesting.
Sorry, I'm just such a sports guy. If you can't see my shrine of Kobe Bryant down there, so I can never let it die. Fuck the Celtics. Sorry. Um, Sid, I want to let you maybe touch on some of the conversations about Bitcoin that you're actually having. I know you touch on like, what do you actually do, and you're getting to know these people on a personal level. But what are the conversations about specific to Bitcoin that are going on, and does it differ location to location? Are you finding certain people are prioritizing a certain aspect of Bitcoin versus a different aspect from a different location because their priorities are different?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, um, to be honest, like I haven't had that many really deep conversations about Bitcoin itself, because I think the most interesting part of Bitcoin is how it changes the world around it rather than Bitcoin itself. Like I haven't had that many technical conversations about Bitcoin, aside from like bit devs or deep dives into different aspects of like Bitcoin, the protocol. We talked a little bit about mining. That's a pretty common thing, and I think kind of a strange way to orange pill people that I've heard repeatedly, especially in states that have really low power costs, because it's one thing to talk about what Bitcoin is and why it matters. But I think even when people ask that question, it's very easy to lose them if they're just curious, because you kind of go off into this abstract world and it doesn't really have any tie to their day-to-day reality. But mining, if you have cheap power, it's a money machine. It literally just prints money for you. And you have to deal with the heat and a little bit of logistics and the power and whatnot. But if you're a tinkerer, especially if you're talking to someone who likes to tinker on things, that works on cars or works on their house, they don't mind that. They actually enjoy that little bit of tinkering. So I found that's a conversation that comes up a lot. People talk about their local mining setup. They're explaining how they got their friends into Bitcoin through mining or get them to set up a rig. And some meetups are actually starting to trade around S9s, which I think is super cool. They are basically like one person will have an S9 that maybe is half functioning, or they're not able to run efficiently, or they just don't need anymore. And they'll loan it out to somebody else at the meetup to then run, because you can learn so much running that thing, even for a day, if not for a week or a month. And I've heard some people say, lend it out until they get their first payout so they can see how it runs and they can get paid in Bitcoin and see, wow, I plug this thing in and it pays me. So that's kind of a really cool thing that we've talked about around Bitcoin. And then I've had some random like philosophical conversations about Bitcoin in the yurt at the guy's homestead in Benton Harbor. We talked about Bitcoin till like midnight, and all different aspects of how it's going to change the world, how it sort of reveals truths. So yeah, it kind of depends on the place for sure. what we're talking about. Mining is probably the biggest topic that comes up over and over again. A lot of states have very cheap energy, and I don't think people understand what they can be doing with that energy.
It looks like we have a wild Brian Armstrong appearance.
I just
good.
I,
heard all the
I
shit
couldn't let
talking.
this interview go by without saying hi to Captain Sid. Finally, bro, I'm so sorry to
What's
have
up?
missed you at the conference, man. How you doing?
It's all good. I'm good. I went and shadow boxed in the park this morning. I'm getting ready.
Yeah, are you
Yeah.
straight striker? Did you need grappling, or are you like a straight Muay Thai guy?
Straight Muay Thai. I was a couch turd until a couple years ago when I started doing Muay Thai. I mean, I go to the gym and I've been running here and there in my life, but not a very athletic person. But I discovered Muay Thai and like, this is fun. This is
Yeah.
like, I can, do this for hours every day and still enjoy it. I never get bored. But I've
A
never done
hundred.
grappling. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, to bring it back to Bitcoin, I really want to, in my future, open a gym that's centered around Bitcoin and all the martial arts, the important ones anyway. Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, a little bit of boxing, you know what I mean? And it would be great to
Yeah.
connect with you and Andrew Howard. But we can do that offline. But I just wanted to say hi, man. It's great to
Nice.
finally hear your story.
Yeah. Great to talk with you, man.
I got
I would join
$20
that
on
gym for
Brian
sure.
Armstrong look-alike.
See, this is what you got to show. It's a collaborative. Muay Thai sparring is it's very light to the touch. It's very you can do it all day without getting hurt. That's the point, I think.
Hmm.
Challenge accepted. I will
Challenge
hurt myself
accepted.
within 15 minutes. I promise
Well,
you.
Q, you have the body type for it, really. I mean, long,
we-
skinny guys are impossible.
Yeah.
We've had this conversation. I mean, honestly, I'm just a tiny stick of a human being that will like break if I move too fast in
That's
opposing
why you gotta get
directions.
strong, bro.
No, I gave up on that pipe dream, man. Like, there's no bulking this body up unless I take so many like supplements and spend like 6 hours a day lifting weights. Like, and I did that senior year of high school, and I actually weighed like a reasonable weight for an adult man. And now I like weigh the same as like a teenage girl. But hey, it's fine. I eat more than like fat people do. So
So I've got a
Doesn't make
question
sense.
for you, Sid. Shifting slightly, what are some of the things that you think most? Because I'm super interested in the community aspects of Bitcoin. I'm got really interested in the Lightning Network and with a bunch of other people created PlebNet, and that's like a very much a virtual community. There never was a physical grouping of people, and that it there are a lot of things that we did that I would focus in on for virtual communities, like going forward. Like, if somebody asked me like, hey, like, what are the things that worked really well? What didn't work well? But I don't have as much of a sense of kind of the physical meetup space. So my question is, what do you think what's your experience been around things that people do poorly? Like, what are things that many meetups or people that are trying to aggregate and create these communities fuck up?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's not fuck ups, it's just missed
Names,
opportunities.
please. Can you call people out to me? No.
Yeah, let me name and shame right now.
Yeah.
Like, I think every meetup needs to have some kind of structure around how they talk about the meetup, how they publicize it. A regular meeting space, a regular meeting time really helps people be able to show up regularly. And if they're kind of outside of the in-group to start, to slowly become a part of the group because there's some sort of structure there. So I would say that that's kind of the biggest thing. And honestly, it's not all the meetup, like it's not all the weight is not on the meetup organizer. I think there's a lot that companies can do and are starting to do, and just larger Bitcoin entities or people in Bitcoin to talk about meetups and to share that there are local meetups going on. That kind of publicity is really important. Like, I've had so many meetup organizers come up to me and say, thank you so much for coming to our city and coming to our meetup, because you're like putting us on the map. And it didn't really register to me that I was doing that. I thought, well, I'm just going to other people's meetups, like it's their meetup. It's not me that's the important part, but they're happy that my trip and the fact that I'm associated with these sponsors and I'm getting a lot of attention on Twitter and whatnot, is bringing attention to their meetup and bringing people in to ask about Bitcoin, to come to the meetup. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is just have some structure around what your meetup is, so that you can talk to people who aren't a part of the meetup yet. You can send them to a meetup page. They can read about what this is and get a sense for it, and get enough understanding to commit to going to one and then to meeting the organizer. The other thing I'll say, which is not anything I've actually seen really at Bitcoin meetups yet, probably by nature of the job, but as a meetup organizer, just say hi to people that come to the meetup. I think that's really important. Every meetup organizer said hi to me, that, they're always excited that I'm coming, and, introduce themselves to me. But I see that meetup organizers, whether they're shy people or not, they make the effort to just say hi and introduce themselves and break the ice with new people to the meetup, to make sure they don't feel like they're just kind of bouncing around until they leave, to kind of be inclusive of anyone that shows up. It's really, I think the moral of the story is, it's really hard to fuck this up. Like, if you,
All right, so then
Fine.
on,
I'm trying
on
to create
that,
controversy here.
you
but
make a
on
meetup
that
page,
moral,
you
who
pick
has
up
fucked
a
it up?
location. Yeah, like no one I have met has fucked this up. They are doing it. Everyone is doing it well at different stages of getting to a bigger meetup. And some are very new and they're just getting started, but it is very difficult to screw up. There's just things, there's like tips and tricks that I could give for how to grow a little bit faster, connect, like create a meetup page, create a Twitter account, talk to Josh Brown from BitRefill. They've been doing a lot of work with meetups. Talk to BitKite, talk to Bitcoin Magazine, talk to other Bitcoin companies about what you're doing, that you're here. A lot of times you might find a lot of Bitcoin companies are remote, and there might be someone who works for a Bitcoin company that's in your area. That can be, one of your first people. Just get started, and really all you need is a place and a time. You don't need a reservation. You just go to a bar and show up. It's going to be 3 people the first time. That's fine. It's probably going to be 3 people the first 4 times you have a meetup, and then it will grow from there, and you'll have more and more people. But just get it started. It's so incredibly hard to fuck up.
That's very kind.
I
Thank
also
you for
wanna
not
just, like,
mentioning the meetup that I tried to organize with you in a burned out McDonald's. You were the only person that showed up, and we just ate cat food. But I still
One of my
learned
best
a lot from
meals.
it. So thanks, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't schedule in burned out McDonald's. That's what I will say. Pick a decent place, and cater to your crowd too. I have noticed that some meetups, people will come, they'll show up and they'll say like, oh, I don't come to this often because I have kids or whatever, and it's an evening, it's at a bar, I can't bring my family, and I don't have enough time to be going to this every week or whatever. I've seen some meetups do kind of split schedules where they'll have a weekday meetup every month that's at a bar at 6 p.m. and that's a certain crowd of people. And then they'll have a weekend meetup at a park where you can bring your family, and that's more like the family's Bitcoin meetup. So that's something to keep in mind. Bitcoiners are all ages and all stripes and all different lifestyles. So if you just pick 6 p.m. in a bar, that's really easy to do and probably the right way to start. But growing beyond that, you might find there are a lot of Bitcoiners who have families or have different schedules and might prefer something else than a loud bar at 6 p.m.
I mean, look, I got to give Pete credit for trying to throw it in that burned down McDonald's. I know that there was a playhouse, so like all the kids could have played in like the melted plastic playhouse, and then the adults could have had like a few like leftover Big Macs. I see no issue with what you attempted, Pete. Like execution could have been better, but work on it.
It was a unique experience for the children, I think.
I appreciate it, guys. I mean, look, I'm always learning, always here to just try new things. Sid, one last inane question. Why didn't you get a sidecar? I feel like there's something you could have done there with like a sidecar and an S9 in the sidecar. You could have had it like powered by like a fan. You could have had it air cooled. You could have got rid of the fans. Like, what were you thinking, man?
Okay, so I had a chance to ride a motorcycle with a sidecar right before I started this trip. And granted, it's maybe not the best example of a sidecar motorcycle, considering it's a 2000s model, but it's made by a company called Ural, which started, I believe, in the Soviet Union and basically still sticks to those design principles. It has a 750cc pig iron engine that produces maybe 15 horsepower, which is abysmally bad. It goes like bang, 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 bang. When you shift it, it feels like you're dropping a stone from the pyramids onto the bike. It goes and shakes every time, but it has a sidecar with a little stalk in the front where you mount your machine gun and a little windshield. And a motorcycle with a sidecar is not a motorcycle because you have that third wheel off on the side. Everything about riding a bike becomes different. So like when you turn on a motorcycle, you would think, if you want to turn right, you would think you put your left hand forward. You push your right hand forward, that leans the bike, and then you turn right. But on a three-wheeled vehicle, you do push that way to go right. So it's literally the opposite. And I almost front end rammed into several cars on the road in my 5-minute ride on this three-wheeled bike. So I don't think I'll be doing that again. Sidecars are not worth it. You can get little trailers, which I didn't realize until I left, and I saw all these old like boomers on their Harleys in Florida with big trailers behind their motorcycles. That I probably should have done maybe next time.
Sid, I'm going to be honest. Everything you just said sounds like a you problem. I think if you were really a Bitcoiner, you would have figured out how to have the sidecar because they look fucking dope. Like no one can deny it, goofy, but also dope.
That's where you lost me, Pete, because sidecars look so lame.
All right. We're going to have to fight after
so
this.
Lame.
You and me, Q.
We're the opening fight. It's Q versus P. The final letter will survive. And then the title card will be Sid versus Alex.
Look, I didn't bring this up, but when I was in high school, I trained extensively in Western boxing. And then when I went to college, I got my ass handed to me by my friends who practiced Muay Thai. I was like, yo, let's do this. Fists only. And they were like, get fucked. And they, kicked me in the face immediately. And I was like, I have to learn.
These dates that P is mentioning, like high school and college, this was like half a century ago.
It's true.
So keep
true.
This in mind as well.
I am an ageless Highlander. I thought
it was last week. I can see the bruise there.
Yeah. I mean, look, time is a construct.
We need proof. We need to verify. My first Muay Thai fight was, before I ever trained Muay Thai, and all I knew is Western boxing. And I went to one of these bars in one of the islands in Thailand where they just put random foreigners into a ring and let you beat the crap out of each other while you're wasted.
Safe.
So I had a bucket of alcohol, drank the whole bucket with a bunch of Red Bull in it. And I was like, hell yeah, like, let's go. I did boxing for 6 months. I can do this. And I tried to box and he just low kicked my leg over and over again. And I was so drunk, I didn't care. Like I didn't feel it really. Just kept hitting my leg. And I don't know how it ended, but I lost clearly. And the next morning I woke up with a purple leg. My entire leg was purple and I couldn't sleep on that side for probably a week. That was pretty brutal.
My last fight, my opponent couldn't walk for 3 days. We became friends afterward, and I was just texting him the whole time, like, "Sorry, bro, good fight though." Like,
I love it. You're just like pouring salt on the wound. Like, how's that leg? Can you walk yet? Oh, you can't. I'm so sorry.
Here's a picture of me riding a bicycle.
It's hard to explain. It's almost like when Bitcoiners go through a bear market together. If you go through a fight together, if you spar together, you're just more connected than normal human beings.
No, for sure. Mm-hmm. For sure. That was my experience too. Yeah. I never did like I don't even want to say promoted fights, but like actual, like, official fights, but I would train with everybody that did. And yeah, man, I agree.
Special kind of activity.
I keep forgetting to unmute myself, but Sid, talk to us. So like where, I'm going to dox you. Where in the country are you right now?
I'm somewhere in Chicagoland. So come find me in I don't know how many million people there are here, but yeah, I'm in Chicagoland for the next week. I think I'll leave on Sunday,
All right.
and
All
then
these crazy
start.
stalker Bitcoiners, go find Captain Sid. I think he has something
Yeah,
for
go
you.
find the
Or if
bike.
not, just tell him.
Take pictures of the bike out and about in the wild if you see it.
Rumor has it Captain Sid has whole Bitcoins he's giving out to people if you actually grab the bike while it's in motion and like pick it up off the ground like some sort of Greek god. If you do that, he will give you a whole Bitcoin.
It's
So
just gonna be
definitely
like I
try
Am
this at home.
Legend.
Yeah, it's
If someone successfully does that without damaging the bike or injuring me, I will give you a whole Bitcoin.
yeah, that's
That would be so wild.
in motion, not damaging Sid, not damaging
the car
bike.
cannot just be on. Like a minimum
Did you say car?
needs to be. No,
Get
sorry,
the fuck
bike.
out of here.
I'm out.
You're
See you
kicked.
guys. Good talk.
Yeah.
Bye. So Chicago, and then talk to us. Are you going south or are you going west directly?
I am going like northwest. So I'm gonna go to Milwaukee next. Got to go to the
Right.
Harley Museum, see that. And then
Okay.
up to Minnesota. I'm doing a beefsteak, my first beefsteak, which I'm embarrassed to admit. I thought a beefsteak just meant a bunch of Bitcoiners eating beef at a restaurant. I didn't
you sweet
realize
summer
that
child.
it's like a thing, it's this whole production. So I'm going to a camping beefsteak in northern Minnesota.
That's the one that everyone's been talking about, right?
I know. I'm so jealous. I was gonna go to that one, but my fiance, wife's family is coming in. I had to bail, but that one is gonna be legit. Away Slice, who does all the cooking, he is a god among men, and everything he touches just turns into magic.
Is Away Slice the same guy who does the one in Miami?
They're all the same. There is only one actual
there's only
beefsteak. Yeah.
Okay, I should have brought this up to him when I saw him recently, but everyone has talked about this Minnesota camping beefsteak where you're all going to go take mushrooms and have the literal best time of your lives. And I'm so jealous that everyone around me was invited and talks about it except for me. So Josh, if you're out there, feel free to invite me next time. Cool. Thank you. That's all.
No, you can't be
Put it in the
asked. You can
conversation.
only be invited.
I know. So that's why I said invite me. I will bring
Yeah,
so
this
much
is the
pop.
first one that I got invited to. So, and I've offered up the engine to cook some of the steak. So we'll
shit. See,
put
that's
that
your
up
in.
against a white
That's your
slice
in.
and see, how it goes.
That's brilliant.
He's got his work cut out for him for sure.
Yeah. In Miami, he gave me a little doggy bag after the beefsteak that was like, here's your little beefsteak to go. And I was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Okay, so Sid, how long do you stay in each area?
Not long, which if I do this again, I will change that. But Texas, I stayed for a while because it's Texas. I was in like Dallas, Austin, Houston for like 5-6 days each. But the US is a big fucking country. And I've tried not to ride on the interstate. Like I live in Thailand full time. And I thought that was like decently big, but no.
No, we're a little
America's
bit bigger than Thailand. Not by much, but the
fucking
US
big.
is a little bit bigger.
Yeah, it's huge. So it takes a very long time to get from place to place. And I'm trying not to ride interstates because it's just god awful, so boring. So I try to ride state roads, which adds a lot of extra
I'm
time.
curious because like you brought up a lot of like cities, like notable cities, some much larger than others, but like where are some places you're going off the beaten path other than like this incredible camping shroom trip that I'm not going to drop how jealous I am that I'm not invited or going to?
Yeah, so like in between some of these places, I've just had like a couple days on the road. So like in between Dallas and Nashville, I think I had 2 or 3 nights on the road, and I didn't really go anywhere all that interesting, to be honest. I just kind of camped and hung out. But the road from Durham, North Carolina to Columbus, Ohio, I think that was 3 nights and 4 days. And I did all state roads, and I hit some really interesting spots that I kind of wasn't expecting to be so interesting. I went to Mount Airy, North Carolina, which I went because I heard it's where Andy Griffith grew up. I didn't really realize that that town is the basis of the Andy Griffith show and the town in that show, which I grew up watching that show. And so that was really cool to see all the kitschy Americana stuff in that town. But even more than that, it struck me as a place, like I'll give you an example. I woke up at like 6:30 in the morning at my campsite, and couldn't fall back asleep because my tent was full of mold and I couldn't breathe. So I had to leave. And I went downtown to some place called Snappy Lunch, I think. It's like a tiny little lunch breakfast place. And everyone in there was talking like across tables. Someone would come in like, oh, how's your wife? Like, what's going on with your kid with this thing? Like, when is your kid's graduation? It felt like this small town, tight-knit community that I saw on the Andy Griffith Show. But then growing up, especially in the Midwest, when I would drive out to go hunting or whatever, and I'd go through these small towns, just felt shelled out. Like there isn't this community anymore. People are just fleeing to go to the cities. And these main street downtowns are just covered in graffiti and awful. And it was cool to see like a small American town that has this small town tight knit vibe, because it's something that I really haven't experienced very much in person. And like that town was cool. Then I went to a town in West Virginia. I went to a coal mine, learned about how god awful that job is, to like crawl underground for hours a day and pick away at coal and blow yourself up a couple times. It's nuts. And that powers like that created most American cities. So there have been some, little small towns. Taking state roads is definitely the way to go, because you go through those small towns. You're forced to see them because you drive through them. So I've stopped a couple of times and be like, whoa, this is really interesting. And I'll stop and take some pictures, or, talk to some locals and then keep going. State roads is definitely the way to travel, because you run into these really cool small Americana towns.
When the best coast?
Soon. Mid-July. Yeah. And I don't have to hesitate. I know what the best coast is.
The East Coast, obviously.
Shut the fuck up, Pete. Shut the fuck up. Mute his mic. Chris,
Actually,
mute his mic.
The only time I went on the Atlantic was Miami. Is that considered the Atlantic, or is some other, they rename it?
No, I consider
Don't want to
Miami the
associate with
Caribbean.
Jersey and
The
whatnot.
Florida Sea.
No. To really fuck with East Coasters like Chris and P, like what we have to do. Although P, you're
No,
not
I'm not even an East Coaster. I'm just fucking.
I know,
with you.
I was about to
I'm
say,
born and bred West Coast.
I was about to say, like, as those words left their mouth, I'm like, that doesn't sound right. No, to really fuck with the East Coasters, I love saying that Miami is not a part of the Atlantic, but rather it's part of the Caribbean, which, like, argumentatively speaking, like, no, but like, yeah.
It might as well be.
Definitely
But
closer to
those
that
waters
vibe.
are too warm to be considered the Atlantic. That's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, when I think of the Atlantic, I think of like someone dumping chemicals out of a Jersey oil refinery or something.
That is how it
I
works
don't
there.
think good things. Yeah.
As a kid that's raised in New Jersey most of his life, that's true. That's pretty much
Yeah, Chris, not a lot of people know this, but Chris actually, he earned his first Bitcoin when he was a young, teenager. He would dive in the Atlantic and just pull the used condoms out and then wash them off and then resell them to the sailors that came in, but only accept Bitcoin for payment.
Amazing.
I have no rebuttal there. I have no rebuttal.
I'm just so disgusted.
No, you don't need to explain how you earned your sats or how many you have. As long
Yeah,
as you've
I
got
didn't
a
want to know, but
cold
Chris was
storage.
just like, yo, here's how it happened. And I was like, that's just too much information. And he was like, no, let me tell you the gory details of every magical find. It was weird. Sid, what are some of the weirdest experiences that you've had? Like, what, driving around, like, what are some of the moments where you were like, oh shit, maybe this was not a good idea?
Have you been pulled over by a cop yet?
Yes. So I have two weird, I have a pulled over experience and a weird experience, both in Tennessee. So I got pulled over by a cop for not wearing a helmet and realizing that helmet laws are real. Texas doesn't care, but Tennessee absolutely cares. I hope my mom is not listening to this, but yeah, I got pulled over and they let me off.
Bro,
because
you
I
were
have a
driving a
temporary plate
motorcycle around the country without wearing a helmet.
in a small town. I was in a small town going very slowly, just like down the road.
All right. Even
And,
I know that you are truly a different level of psychotic and crazy than I am. And I hate wearing a helmet, but I wear it. But my God.
I mean, I 99% of the time I wear it, but I have a whole thing about not wearing helmets that I can get into, but I'll get into the weird story
If
about.
you use that bullshit argument that says like, oh, because you're like, I wear a helmet when I go snowboarding, and Brecky tried to like at a meetup in LA was like, well, only reason I have to wear a helmet now because I ski is because of people like you. Is like, no, I wear a fucking helmet because I go between the trees and I've been hit by so many tree branches. I don't give a shit about other skiers wearing a helmet. Like there's
No,
like
it's not that.
legitimate things.
It has nothing to do with anyone else. It's more psychological thing. But anyway, but I want to get to the weird experiences. So
Okay, fine.
I was on the way from Chattanooga to Asheville in the Great Smoky Mountains between Tennessee and North Carolina. A lot of beautiful roads there. And I stopped at this place called the Greenback Castle, which I just saw. I basically saw it on Google Maps, clicked on it, and saw some pictures. And I was like, this looks weird. I'll go and take some pictures here. So I roll up, and there's this like really old man sitting outside in like very dirty Tennessee jacket. And as soon as I walked up and he looked at me, he's like, oh, first visitor today. And he looked his eyes just lit up. And it's like, okay, I thought I was going to be here for 20 minutes. This is going to be a little bit longer. And I think I was there for like an hour and a half because he kept explaining to me how he built this whole castle himself with a back problem because Jesus is coming back because the world has fallen into sin, and explaining how all these different artworks, like some of the artworks he made, and he was very clear, like, this looks like Jesus made it, but I made it. And then some of them, he said, if you see it, it looks like this, Jesus made that. And he has an explanation for predicting COVID. He had predicted COVID in 2019. And well, Jesus predicted COVID with a mural on the wall. He has the 4 horsemen hanging out in a room in Ghosts. He's had the University of Tennessee.
Like drawings.
Ghosts. But then I went in there and it was a drawing. So I wasn't really sure. Maybe his interpretation of ghost is a little bit looser. He's like, come in this room and you will see a ghost. And I was like, awesome, I'm ready. And it was a drawing. And he's like, look, there's a ghost. And yeah, a lot of little ghost things. He's had the University of Tennessee there. He had like the CIA there, and he has some newspaper clippings about like the CIA coming to look at the Greenback Castle and capturing footage of ghosts, but they won't talk about it. That was very interesting. Do not stop unless you have time. But
so wait, are you saying you've never been
worth seeing
afraid
this
for your
guy.
safety? No one's ever been like, give me all your Bitcoin, and like shattered a bottle and waved it around menacingly?
So I got really high before this trip, like a couple months before I left, and I had set up everything with like Swan and stuff. And in the middle of the night, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't, I'm going to get killed. You know, like someone's going to kidnap me and take all my Bitcoin, and it's going to be a disaster. My life's going to end because of this, because I tried to do this trip. And then I talked to a couple like more OG Bitcoiners from like 2013, 2014. And they were like, dude, I've literally never heard of anyone getting like actually $5 wrench attacked for Bitcoin. Like hacks, yeah, and, you know, getting stolen from your exchange account, but someone like attacking a Bitcoiner in public, in real life, has never happened in their knowledge.
Yeah.
So it kind of talked me off. Yeah, kind of talked me off the ledge a little bit. And going to more Bitcoin meetups, like when I worked for an exchange, I think it was drilled in my mind, like if you talk about Bitcoin, someone will slit your throat like 20 minutes later. So never talk about it, never mention that you work for an exchange. And that put me in this like paranoid mode where I was always paranoid about anyone even knowing that I was ever associated with Bitcoin. And now going to meetups, I'm like, these are, you know, normal people who are also going out there and talking about Bitcoin and talking to other people about Bitcoin and having perfectly normal lives without people slashing their throats for their Bitcoin. And I think it's getting more normalized. Like back in 2017, if you said I have Bitcoin, it's like, oh, you must be rich. Like you must have got in early. And it's probably true for a lot of people in 2017. But now it's more normal. Having Bitcoin is just, oh yeah, I have Bitcoin. Like everyone has a little bit, or, you know, has bought a little bit into the crypto ecosystem and all that shit. So it's more normalized, I think, to say you have Bitcoin. So I don't feel like super unsafe. I haven't had any like weird run-ins like that, except for people just blatantly asking me like, oh, how much Bitcoin do you have? I'm like, I'm not telling you that.
I love my response. My neighbor did that to me once, and I point blank was like, how much is your 401k worth? And she was like aghast. I was like, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Welcome
Chris,
to my
I know you were
401k.
like, it's a learning curve. People are going to learn and understand. Like, you don't ask how much you get. You don't ask someone how much they make. You don't ask, like, it's a weird thing. Money has always, I think, culturally been a weird thing. And as those of us in Bitcoin have learned historically, like, yeah, money just brings out the worst in a lot of people. Chris, you were definitely going to chime in before I just like intervened though.
Yeah, no worries. I think Jameson Lott posted something about maybe not $5 wrench attacks, but I know he posted one thing, or at least an article about a guy that was date raped. So he went on, and not to scare anyone, but he posted an article about a guy that went on a Tinder date, and somehow I don't know if he said he was working for a Bitcoin company or had Bitcoin in his bio for Tinder, and he went on this date with this girl, and it was like going well, but it was like weird. She kept asking very poignant questions. Like you said, like, how much Bitcoin do you have? And he's like, I'm not telling you that. And then he's like, oh, like, she's like, oh, well, how about you come up for a drink? And he's like, all right. So he went for a drink at her place or some, I forget what it was, but there's basically a story that like all of a sudden he like blacked out and woke up the next day and like his house was kind of like ransacked and stuff. So definitely something to be careful for, but I would agree, Sid. I think it's now become more mainstream. It's less, and not saying to don't be safe or don't be careful about it, but it's definitely becoming more mainstream and everyone's like, oh, I've got a little bit, or it's, it's like having real estate or having stock or having Bitcoin. It's all the same. Yeah, definitely different attacks. But I thought there was a website, correct me if I'm wrong. Did NBK create a website of people that have claimed to be $5 wrench attacked? And like, I think starting in 2013, there was maybe like 2, and then now it's maybe, I don't know if like 20 or 30 every so year or so.
I mean, the reality is like if someone's gonna like steal your Bitcoin, like
steal your Bitcoin.
No. Like if you're like a fucking millionaire and somebody wants to like steal your shit, they can just like hold you at gunpoint and make you buy Bitcoin and send it to them. Like it doesn't matter whether you have Bitcoin, it's less important whether you like have Bitcoin or whether you have assets. So in the same way that, someone is especially as expectations around like multi-sig setups and things like that become more understood, I think it's not as much of a concern. But for people that like keep all their shit like in their house, which no one should do, then like, yeah. But I agree.
Trust the intermediary like a bank. Definitely trust the banks.
No, do not trust the fucking banks. Sid, I had a similar thing. I grew up in like my father was like a precious metals trader, and so even before Bitcoin, it was like it was like the same thing but with like gold, and it was like you never talk about gold. The first rule of Gold Club is you will be rich, and the second rule of Gold Club is you never talk about how much gold or ever mention gold, because if you do, they'll fucking stab you and they'll take your gold. And so it was like, and that was my view on Bitcoin too, like for many years. And then Clubhouse happened, and like coronavirus lockdowns, and I was just like, fuck it, I'm talking about Bitcoin. And it became, very public, and now I talk on podcasts and show my face every day. But yeah, it was I feel like
there's also something, I mean, not to like get really dark and fucked up about it, but like the story you described, Chris, it could have ended in so many ways beyond just like his house got ransacked. Like he could have fucking woken up and been missing a kidney for all we know. Like that shit happens. And like, I'm making this number up. I think someone threw it out, but I think it was Foss, or it might've been Greg Foss who told us how if you own 0.21 Bitcoin, you're now in the top 1% of all holders, because as we've expanded, like, a majority of people don't even hold a whole Bitcoin. So to all of your guys' point, like as Bitcoin continues to become more and more mainstream, I think that fear goes away. But I do respect and understand why some people, like I saw a conversation happening on Twitter. People were like, do you wear Bitcoin clothing in public? Like, do you draw attention to the fact that you're a Bitcoiner when you're just out in public or not? And it's a question of safety and whatnot, and who you, I think, want to be. But that also, like, look at the Bitcoin community. Look at how many people like to keep their internet identity anonymous. So look at how important KYC has become as a topic of conversation, how we interact with different businesses. So I think safety and security will always have a place in Bitcoin and with Bitcoiners. It just will be very interesting what that looks like in a future where everyone's a Bitcoiner.
Yep. Very true.
Sid, I'm not going to harp about the fact that you're not wearing a helmet, but both your mom and I are going to be sending you regular messages now, making sure you're wearing a helmet. I already sent her an email, so you're fucked.
Well, her OPSEC must be really bad. You got her email in this 10 minutes.
What is like you're on the road constantly, like you're not in your own home, you're defying death with two little rubber tires holding you together pretty much, or attached to the earth, if you will. What do you miss? What is it like when I'm done, I cannot fucking wait for blank?
Yeah, to be honest, I miss routine. Like, I miss waking up and having time and space to do a couple things in the morning every day. It is really fun, like going to all these different meetups and whatnot, but I don't have as much time for the big things are like exercise and cooking good food. Like, I'm getting pretty tired of just eating whatever I can find. Not only just like food quality, but like the mental energy that it takes to make the decisions of what am I going to eat, where am I going to go today, when everything is always new, is really tiring. And I like when I get into a groove living in one place, like when I was living in Asia, I just got into a groove of, okay, I'm going to eat this thing and I'm just going to eat this for the I'm going to prepare it and eat it for the next week. And it just gets rid of all that energy. And then I can focus on other stuff that I really want to put energy toward. And exercise is the other biggest thing. I barely exercise on this trip. And like we were talking about with Alex, I'm not really doing Muay Thai. I'm not running all that much. On days when I ride, I'm just too tired when I'm done to also get up and go exercise. Plus all the logistics of like, yeah, I can run on the street, but if I want to go lift or something, I don't have a gym, or the hotel gym only has one thing or whatever. So it's a lot more difficult to have that kind of routine. And that routine helps me just skip stuff like I don't have to think about exercising. I don't have to think about eating right. It just happens. And then I can focus on things like writing or, other stuff, doing podcasts, other things that I'm interested in doing and enjoy doing and want to put more energy towards. But it's kind of, I feel like this is just a part of the cycle of life. I'm doing this trip now, and then I will probably have like 3 months of just super chill, not going anywhere, getting back into a routine. And then I'll get bored and I'll do, not another trip like this quite so soon, but, I'll do some more adventures and whatnot and kind of swing the pendulum back and forth.
Do you think your next trip will still be in America, or will you take the bike across borders?
Oh, I'm going to do it in Thailand. That's kind of shaping up to be real. I did not think I would be doing a trip in Thailand or anything like that so soon, but I'm not going to do it on the bike that I have. The bike will stay in the US. But I was talking about this with Texas Slim on his podcast. So he's also been to Thailand a bunch and loves it. And he wants to do like a beef initiative, orange pilling Bitcoin trip around Thailand. So he might come in January of next year. I'll be back in the fall. And so he'll come in January and we might do like a dirt bike trip around Thailand for a month or two and do kind of similar thing. Won't be nearly the same. Like we won't be going to Bitcoin meetups and whatnot, unless there are tons of Bitcoin meetups that are popping up that I don't know about. But it doesn't seem like there's that many Bitcoin meetups in Thailand right now. But we'll be learning more about like food systems and talking to people about Bitcoin basically all around the country. That should be fun.
It sounds like we're gonna be hearing about you starting up some meetups over in Thailand.
Yeah, it might be time for that. The meetup world has been difficult for me in Thailand. I find a lot of shitcoining, and that's always frustrating to me. But I have kind of a small crew of friends and we will have like dinners together, and we're all Bitcoiners. But maybe it's time to have an official Bitcoin meetup and try to attract Bitcoiners. I think a lot has changed. When I was going to Bitcoin meetups, it was like 2018, 2019, and it just wasn't the same world. It wasn't the same environment around Bitcoin. So I think there's been a big bifurcation between Bitcoin and the rest of crypto, and it's starting to be normal to go to a Bitcoin meetup and have it be a completely different experience than going to a crypto meetup.
Right now, you walk into a room and someone's shilling some sort of shit coin. Before you smack the drink out of their hand and do some sort of Muay Thai move to break bones, what do you say to them as to why Bitcoin and not shitcoin?
So it goes all the way down to understanding what that coin actually is and what a quote unquote blockchain is. Because I think that's sort of the innovation that underpins all of this, is this idea of a blockchain. People throw that word around, blockchain, and don't understand what the hell it means. What I always say is that blockchain does only one thing different from just a normal computer or normal network of computers. It enforces rules about data without needing a ruler who can change those rules. And once you understand that, you understand that having that rules without rulers is extremely hard to achieve, and is something that lives on a spectrum such that people will adopt the network with the strongest assurances against rewriting rules, and everything else will be an afterthought. And so that's kind of how I drop everything else off, that if it's less decentralized than the top one, or has less assurances that the rules can't be rewritten by some centralized party, there's more attack vectors, then it's not really worth looking at, because everything else will be built on top of the most decentralized, this with the strongest assurances that there are no rulers and there will not be rulers in the future. And once you say that, people, are like, kind of change their mindset about shitcoins. So I think a lot of people they look at the conversation through the wrong frame, and look at shitcoins versus Bitcoin, say, well, Ethereum has Vitalik and this team that's working on it. And, my shitcoin has this company that's working on it. That's a centralized entity that then has strong influence over how the rules are written of their protocol. So that's actually the worst possible thing, not a good thing. And it changes the conversation. So you start thinking, okay, what is the protocol with the least amount of centralization on it? And that's Bitcoin. It sacrifices literally everything else for that ability to have rules without rulers. That's really all that matters in space. And I have yet to have anyone give me a good excuse to why their coin should exist. The people that I have given that pitch to just start to admit that they're gambling. And that's really what it's all about. And it's fine if you want to gamble, but don't be under any illusion that these things have intrinsic real, I hate the word intrinsic, but that they have value, beyond you getting in and out of them and into something else.
Love that. May your orange pilling endeavors continue and be successful. I want to present one last question, this one coming from our YouTube audience. What has been the most rewarding aspect of the tour so far?
Just getting to shake the hands of Bitcoiners from all over the country and see that even though we come from very different backgrounds and have very different life experiences, we all kind of have the same ethos in common. And getting to sit down and look people in the eyes and talk to them in person, because so much of this space happens online and on Twitter and whatnot, and you just get a tiny sliver of who people are, or you get a distorted view of who people are because the internet rewards them for being mean or focusing on a specific topic or whatever it is. You get to see people as real humans And that is an insanely rewarding experience. Just talking to Bitcoiners in person. Been way more fun and rewarding and interesting than I could have imagined before I started this trip.
Love that. Sid, I want to, unless P wants to ask anything else, give you the final opportunity to chime in or share something that we didn't get the chance to ask you about, or that we didn't get a touch on with you today.
Chris had mentioned that you guys would ask me about how I'm staying, like where I'm staying as I'm going through this trip, and I can touch on that briefly. So I am camping a little bit. I've tweeted some pictures of tents and whatnot. I'm camping. I have a tent on the back of the bike. It's not my favorite way to get rest because it usually doesn't, it's kind of a crapshoot, usually doesn't work out too well. But I camp a little bit, stay in hotels, stay with friends. But by far the most fun, rewarding, and unexpected way to stay has been with Bitcoiners. Random Bitcoiners have reached out to me and said, hey, if you're coming here, I will put you up for a night or 2 nights or however long you're in town. And I've had such cool experiences because of that. Like my last stop in Benton Harbor, I stayed in a yurt on a homestead and learned all about food forests and regenerative farming and how this world kind of works and how you can go from not knowing anything about farming to living completely off of the land and then some, like selling some or giving some away to friends. And I wouldn't have had that experience if I hadn't stayed in his yurt, and I got a free night and it was super fun. Like we had a really good time. So that has been something that, coming from, we were talking about this background of everyone wants to stab you and steal your Bitcoin and you should never talk about it. I was not expecting Bitcoiners to let me stay with them at their houses, but I found a lot of people are really generous to do that. And one of my friends on this ride said, it's reputation. Like after the first few stays and people, are able to talk to other people that I stayed with, and I haven't stolen anything or done anything weird or tried to kill anyone or steal any Bitcoin, you build that reputation. And I can ruin that in a day, obviously, but as long as I have that reputation, people are more comfortable now putting me up. So that was a whole long spiel to say, like, please, can I stay on your couch when I'm in town? Because I don't want to spend any more sats.
The ask has been made, guys. If you are on the remaining Bitcoin bike tour docket, open up your couch. He just needs like a pillow, honestly. Like he'll sleep on the floor. I'll offer that for him.
Dude, I can sleep on the floor. Yeah.
Guys, open up your homes. He's gonna steal your sats. He's gonna steal your food. He's gonna use up all your hot water. But great guy otherwise.
I'm gonna plug in my S9 while I'm there. Just comes to the territory. So you have a jet engine in your living room, and your power bill will be obscenely high.
I love the idea of like you trying to do it surreptitiously and somebody being like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, are you plugging in an S9 in my house? And be like, no, it's part of my bike. Like, don't even trip, dog. And then like,
it's just a space heater. It's a little cold.
Yeah.
So, and to fire up space heater.
This has been a pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Where should our audience be staying up to date with the latest of the Bitcoin bike tour? Throw out whatever the best social media platforms are that you're sharing everything you're doing.
Yeah, so if you want to find all of them, I'll just give you one link. You can follow me on Twitter. You can join the Telegram group where we have a little community talking about it. You can donate to me to help with the costs. If you go to btcmoto, moto.com, so it's btcmoto.com, that'll redirect to a link tree that I have that has all the links. So that's where you can find me, follow me. You can email me through there if you have a question or whatever. That's the best place to go. As far as final thoughts, I want to say, go to your local meetup, meet some Bitcoiners in person. Everyone that I've talked to about going to their meetup, they've said they didn't expect going to their meetup to be such a great experience. And they would meet so many awesome people. I mean, I see people making friends, not Bitcoiner or professional connections or anything. This is like groups of friends. It's a community that is bubbling up around this protocol. So go to your local meetup. If you don't have a local meetup or you can't get that far, just start one. There's a lot of companies out there that are willing to help with any costs or to give you like a bar tab to help out. And it will start with a few people. So don't feel like that isn't a real meetup. It will start like that and it will slowly grow. And I think the best meetups I've been to, they grow just naturally from people pulling in other people and friends and family and whatnot, and slowly growing over time. It's a grassroots thing. So you don't need to force it. It doesn't need to be some official thing. Just start a meetup page and get a couple people together for drinks, and it will grow from there.
Guys, go support your local meetup, and if it doesn't exist, go start your local meetup. It can literally just be you and two friends having a meal, smoking a joint, sharing a beer, whatever you want to do. There's no rules, and that's the best part. Sid, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing about and chatting with you. Be sure you guys give him a follow, and of course, get your tickets to Bitcoin 2023. They are on sale now. The prices are going to go up. Never going to be cheaper than this. It was already cheaper than this, but you slept. You missed the boat. I gave you a hack at the beginning of the episode to get a raise through buying Bitcoin conference tickets. So you're welcome. Go back and listen to that as well. And then we'll take a long commercial break, Chris. We'll take a long commercial break before Fed Watch, but we're going to be joined by none other than Ansel and CK because he's back in town. So stick around, guys, and use promo code FOMO. Get 10% off of everything in the Bitcoin Magazine store. I think I've done all of our obligatory plugs. I don't get paid enough to do all this. I'm kidding. I do. I get paid to say all these things.
live.
Y'all, we are back. I am back after quite the hiatus and excited to run through this week's Fed Watch. We are getting up there, getting close to 100 episodes of Fed Watch. So pretty exciting. Ansel's pretty much done every single one of them. I've been on most of them. And we have quite the show for y'all today. What's up, Ansel?
Oh, not much. Just come back from a long weekend. And I think I started around Fed 25. So I've only been here for about 75 episodes.
All right. Well, maybe it was sooner than that. I don't know. we're crunching towards 100. So I'm excited. It's been a joint effort. And I got to give a shout out to the live stream crew and our producer, Chris. Thanks for joining this effort and helping us put this show on every single week. Ansel, we got a jam-packed show. What are we talking about?
Yeah, so I thought we could just talk a little bit about Bitcoin and what our feelings are about the price right now and about the market, because I don't think that, price is reflecting the fundamentals. And I kind of have my head down a little bit in the macro side of things, and don't, anymore these days. I don't follow the news cycle in Bitcoin as much as I should, but that's where you guys on Bitcoin Magazine really, excel. So I was wanting to pick your guys' brain about kind of what you guys see in the news cycle, and is it slowly starting to match fundamentals out there?
I guess if I could just give my commentary, no way. Bitcoin's fundamentals are incredible, and we haven't seen anything yet. I guess we see Bitcoin rallying with the NASDAQ a little bit. We're seeing altcoins not. So there's a little bit of this decoupling, but I think it's way too early to tell. And ultimately, I'm so bullish on Bitcoin fundamentals that I think we're nowhere close to what the actual value is.
Chris or Q?
Chris, do you want to jump in? I don't know if Q's ready.
Yeah, Q, you there, or P? You want to hop in at all?
Just the question is about what do you guys make of the Bitcoin news cycle? And Christian brought up a good point about altcoins and how, I've been trying to push that Bitcoin is not crypto and crypto is not Bitcoin, but there is still in the market, this idea that Ethereum and others are peers of Bitcoin. And I see some of the fundamentals of Ethereum kind of affecting the price of Bitcoin. Do you guys have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I said this before, but I think that they are, as you said, totally different things, right? You have Bitcoin, which represents sound money. It's this revolutionary innovation in so many different areas. And then you have Ethereum and all the other shit coins. And Ethereum manages to keep relevance, in my opinion, because it was one of the earlier affinity scams that was trying to affinity scam Bitcoin, and also because, as I've said before, others have said before, Ethereum is the anus through which all of the shitcoins are shat out into the world, and so, or many of them, and so that is a factor that keeps it, seemingly relevant. But I think that as much as I hate to say it, I think that even though, Ethereum has gotten, and everything else has gotten totally wrecked, way more wrecked than Bitcoin, these are like ticks on the back of a dog. They just basically come back up as soon as the price of Bitcoin starts going up again. And I don't think we're ever going to see scams in any area, but certainly not in Bitcoin, ever go away completely. But I think that in terms of sort of news cycle and hype and everything, Bitcoin Twitter has certainly died down. A lot of people who are usually very vocal have died down. I think that's a great thing. I think that in bear markets, all the actual work gets done. And in bull markets, it's when you have to deal with a ton of noise and just background garbage. So I'm happy. But
yeah, I'll agree. I guess we've seen a little bit of a rally lately. I guess the Memorial Day rally in terms of price going up slightly. I don't want to focus on that, though. I think a lot of assets are still correlated. As Ansel, I know we've been talking about this for weeks, just with, interest rates rising, we're just kind of watching global economies crumble. I think everyone's kind of waiting for what's going to break. Q hounds on this all the time. Like, I think Bitcoin's correlated to the NASDAQ at like 0.93, so 93% correlation. A lot of people think it's going to break correlation. NASDAQ will keep falling, Bitcoin will go up, maybe the reverse will happen. I'm not one to speculate, but I still think there's a lot of correlation across all assets, across all markets, until we have a better understanding of what's to come, basically.
Okay, I want to throw this theory out, and then I'm going to go back to reading my book quietly and let you guys actually talk. But it has been a very fruitful and very lucrative trade to use the Bitcoin price action and movement to essentially help me forward forecast QQQ puts and calls. And it has actually become very lucrative to treat it like on a 2-week trailing, sometimes less than 2-week trailing basis. And like, for example, that dip that we saw 2 weeks ago when Bitcoin went like to 26K, but NASDAQ kind of like held there. Well, guess what happened about 10 days later? It undercut that low from the day when everyone thought, oh, it's hyper correlated. It's like, no, Bitcoin is the leading indicator right now. That's the way I've been trading it. I've been making some good money doing it. That's my 2 cents on the correlation.
Or Q, maybe one thing before you go away, aren't you just basically correlating it to volatility then? You're basically just using Bitcoin as like a leading volatility index for the index. I mean, I don't know if you've tried correlating Bitcoin, the volatility index, and the QQQ.
You get away with it, and it essentially is that. The real reason why I think this works well for right now is because it's a 24-hour market. So like, whereas you get like the price gets locked for longer than the price is actually active in the publicly traded markets. Whereas with Bitcoin, because it's available 24/7, you can get a much cleaner, in my opinion, price forecasting tool. And like, whether or not you agree with this, I am fully in the camp that Bitcoin for the time being is just a risk on asset by big money managers and big funds. And that's why you see this correlation. Well, that correlation for them happens instantaneously, while the correlation in the public markets takes time to unwind and unload. So I think that is really what you're seeing causing the delay / correlation between the two markets. Look, I think I'm an expert. I'm not. I like to think I am. So take it with a grain of salt. Use your own tools to actually gauge and measure this. But I think there are weird opportunities, like treating the Bitcoin as some sort of a leading indicator to the NASDAQ, and that you can take advantage of. But that's just my 2 cents.
Well, one of my narratives I'm pushing is that Bitcoin is actually a superior pricing tool in the long run. So that would be an example of how Bitcoin is even today leaving and creating opportunities to get better pricing signals. So I think it's bullish and cute. I think a lot of what you said is probably accurate. I'm curious what Ansel has to say.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I remember a couple of years ago, people were talking about Bitcoin being a leading indicator by weeks or months, even to the broader markets. I think that probably still holds true because Bitcoin is more volatile, right? So Bitcoin can change on a dime, where it might take a little bit more to move the inertia, say, of the stock markets. But interesting correlation, talking about correlation, because I'm actually not a S&P or a stock bear at this point. I think that we probably won't see all-time highs anytime soon, but I also don't think we're going to see massive sell-offs just because of the way capital is going to be fleeing other parts of the world and probably going into dollar-denominated assets. So I think that's good for Bitcoin. It's also good for U.S. stocks. But we could go on further, or we can just jump into the inflation numbers that I had prepared on the slides. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no. So let's let Q get back to his book. Let's jump into those slides. We got international inflation numbers. So what we're always doing here is keeping y'all up to date with what's happening in macro with the Fed globally. So we have Germany, the Eurozone in general, and just gonna get into these numbers. And Q, I'm not making fun of you, man. Just we got to get on with the show.
Yeah, well, that was good for me because I want to have my finger on the pulse. And I think over the last couple months, it's been kind of depressing to keep in the Bitcoin news cycle. So you guys are a lot of my signal out there. So I appreciate that. Now, yeah, getting onto these inflation numbers is the first slide here I have. Chris, you haven't pulled up. Okay, so first one is this German CPI. It printed today, and it's the highest in 60 years. It's actually the tied for the highest in 70 years, going all the way back to 1950. So this is a pretty significant rise, as you can see on this chart. Germany is very sensitive to inflation because they still have cultural memory of the Weimar Republic hyperinflation back in the 20s that led to a rise of populism and bad things over there in Germany. So, you know, they really hate this. I'm sure that it's going to make some dramatic political changes over there in Germany. And Germany is above average for the Eurozone. So going to slide 2, the Eurozone inflation preliminary numbers for May were released this morning as well, and they are above expectation by a pretty significant amount. So the expectation was 7.8%, and they are all the way up at 8.1%. So the Eurozone kind of seems they haven't peaked in inflation like the US has, which we'll get into here in a second. They almost look like they're 3 to 6 months behind where the US economy is. And then taking this into slide number 3, the PCE was released in the last week, and this is for April. So the PCE comes out at the end of the month, where the CPI comes out at the beginning of the month. Both of them, you know, obviously are for the prior month. So the April's number of PCE just came out, and this was, people were talking about this could be behind the stock market rally that we saw when Bitcoin was decoupling a little bit from the stock market last week, because of this PCI number PCE number that came out. As you can see on the screen here, the the year over year for the core PCE fell to 4.9%. And if you look at the month over month number, it's actually the 4th month in a row of slowing PCE. That is significant. It's also the Fed's preferred measurement. So they do look at the CPI, of course, but they look closely at this PCE, and I think it carries more weight for them. So we see the 4th month in a row where PCE has slowed, and the 2nd month in a row where the year over year PCE has decreased. The next slide, slide number 4, is the US CPI month over month. And this is one thing that I've been looking at more often because I think there's a lot of fudge room within
quick. Yep. Before we switch to the next slide, can we actually go back to the PCE slide, and can you just clarify a little bit what is PECE and what's its relationship to CPI?
Well, it's just a different measure with different weights. I'm not exactly sure the exact way that it differs from CPI, but this is more of a deeper economic number than looking at consumer prices. This could be looking at producer prices and different prices in the economy. So it's kind of a deeper look at the state of prices in the economy than a CPI would. Does that make sense? Like CPI is more surface level and PCE is more a depth look.
Like, how is the PCE used in kind of determining policy or anything like that from, you know, a Fed perspective?
Well, when they look at inflation and they talk about fighting inflation, they are looking more at PCE. So if PCE starts, like if you look at this chart up here, it peaked in February where the CPI peaked in March. So when the Fed is looking at their decisions, whatever they're going to do, if PCE and CPI are divergent, you know, what we should be considering in Fed policy is PCE and not CPI.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense. Sorry, we can go to the next slide now. Thanks.
All right, so the next slide here is the month over month number, and like I said, this is what I look at more often now because there can be a lot of well, the year over year number that we're familiar with, you know, like 8.5% that we had back in April. There can be a lot of stuff hidden within that. Like if the inflation was a lot during the beginning of that year and less so at the end of that year, you can't really get a lot of nuance from the year over year number. So I like this month over month number. And what we see here is that it has fallen to its lowest level since back in January of 2021. And I expect this to possibly stay this low, down at 0.3% month over month, which will then in turn have a big impact on the year over year change. So I'm just trying to show this because a lot of people ragged on the word transitory, but if this actually happens and we see a CPI really coming down over the next 3 to 6 months, I don't understand how people can't say, oh yeah, that was transitory and the Fed was right all along. They just retired that term because we refuse to understand what they're trying to say. So any comments on that, the whole conversation on CPI and inflation and stuff?
So, I mean, do you think that the tightening up of monetary policy is causing this?
No, I think this is natural market moves. The market goes in its own patterns and own cycles. One reason why I think the Fed has really been hawkish is not because, most macro pundits out there, they say, oh, the Fed is doing this. The Fed is tightening. Can the Fed actually do this with everyone screaming about recession? Can they keep raising rates? I don't look at it that way. I see the Fed as follower. They will follow where the market leads. They are just trying to shepherd to a soft landing, and a quick recovery. They don't actually directly impact any of these type of numbers. So when I see the CPI and it's turning down, I think that what the Fed did was they saw a sharp deceleration in the middle of 2022, and they wanted to get out ahead of that. Because if the economy decelerated while they were still doing QE, like their confidence in the Fed would have been trash, and they wouldn't have been able to shepherd the market to a soft landing. So they had to get out ahead of this downturn. Now that the economy is turning over, and which we'll show in some of these other macro charts that I have lined up, as the market is turning over, now the Fed can repivot their narrative because it's all about a narrative and keeping confidence in the Fed.
Makes sense. No, and I agree. Again, that's been the message that we've been talking about on this show. It's been a message that a lot of our guests have iterated, but yet it really is kind of like an outsider's opinion. It's not popular yet, but I do find this kind of understanding to be catching steam. And again, I'd like to, give Ansel a shout out. You have been on this tirade for pretty much the entirety of this show. I think, all of our past 94 episodes can be a nice proof of that. But it is this understanding that the Fed just controls expectations and the narrative, and that is their true policy power. Like that is becoming a much more widely accepted idea, despite the fact that it's still not a popular opinion, even amongst the people who are kind of with the counter narrative, if you will.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like we had Tom Luongo on a couple episodes ago, and he is very closely related to my outlook, at least on like geopolitics and stuff. But he thinks that the Fed will keep raising. But I don't understand how they could do that if they don't control the market. Why would they keep raising if the market, all the market rates for US treasuries and stuff are coming back down, and the Fed raises the Fed funds rate and it absolutely does nothing. It just exposes that they are impotent to the market. How could that, build confidence in the Fed? I think that's exactly the opposite of what they want. Powell wanted to get out ahead of this, so they now have room to pivot. And I think that they will pivot. And it could be as easy as just pausing at this point. And that would be a huge updraft to risk assets of all types, including Bitcoin and stocks. So I see that coming in the middle of this year, in the next few months, actually. I think they will pause.
Wow. Okay. So They're watching the PCE, they're watching the CPI, they're seeing these things go down. And if they continue to go down over the next few months, the next quarter, you think that odds are is they will slow down the tightening. They will respond to the market's agony, if you will, and that is very bullish for risk on assets.
Yeah, I mean, the Fed doesn't, oh, sorry, I hit my mic. The Fed does not want to crush the economy. The Fed wants to be seen as great shepherds of the economy. And so they are not going to do anything to run it into the ground. I don't understand that. Okay, the next section I have here is on currencies. Should we dive into that? Bitcoin, of course, is the headline number, and that will be slide number 5. So what I'm showing here is if you go, it's a little bit over a year on the daily chart. So it's a little bit busy, but if you go to the far right, you can see where we have broken out of this kind of bottoming pattern, and we have bullish divergences in my 2 favorite indicators, which are just basic. But, I always say that RSI and MACD, they are what everything else is built off of, all these other fancy indicators. So anyways, we have a...
Can you explain what RSI and MACD are for people who aren't familiar with technical analysis?
Oh, man. Okay, so RSI is relative strength.
Making you work, Ansel. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do this expertly, but relative strength index, RSI, is built off of volume. So like the direction of the candle and volume. The higher the volume, the more it actually moves in that direction with the color of the candle. Then there's oversold and overbought conditions. So if it has moved a lot in one direction and you go below 30 on the RSI, that's considered oversold. If you go above 70, that's considered overbought. So you can kind of, stay in that band that would be a healthy market. Now, when you have a divergence, means that your price has actually gone down, but the relative strength has gone the other direction. So you see on this chart here, the relative strength has trended upwards, even though the price has trended downwards. So that is a divergence, and it means that there could be a reversal coming. It doesn't always work, but it's pretty good, especially if you have it on multiple time frames. Now, the MACD, I'm not the one to explain this. I think it has to do with the moving averages. I think it's like a 7-day and a 14-day, or a 14-day and a 21-day, something like that. But again, you have these divergences where the MACD just recently is trending up, even though the price is trending down. So that is divergence. Now, on the left side of the screen here, you see the peak that I circled. That was a very similar situation to today. And that actually coincided with the Bitcoin 2021 conference. If you guys remember, back June of 2021, we had a pattern with a divergence, and we broke out, but then it quickly reversed. So we could be looking at something like that, but the difference back then versus today is that was back with the GBTC scandal, all the unlocking that was happening with GBTC. And there was a lot of uncertainty and bearishness around that event. So right now, I don't see that kind of fundamental force, selling force in the Bitcoin market. So I don't think we're going to see a repeat of June of 2021, but I just wanted to point out that kind of similarity to what we saw back then. Do you guys have, Christian, do you have any comments on the chart before we move on? You're muted.
I don't have anything super smart to say. It is interesting to learn about these indicators and kind of see how they correlate with price. But, I feel like right now investors are really kind of leaning into and listening in on what the Fed is going to do, and kind of, maybe that is just the noise that's drowning out the real signal. But, I just, I can't see, what matters more than the expectations from the market, at least from that perspective.
I want to ask, and Ansel, forgive me if this is going to be one of the future charts, but on last week's Bitcoin and markets, I love the chart that you always include with like the volume on the side. So you can see like how much volume was buying at a certain price level. Like I've been very vocal about this. this 28,000 line that we're seeing at the bottom of this current chart, the Bitcoin price chart that you're seeing, like what validity are you seeing to 28K being held based on how long we've been and how much volume that you're seeing transact at that price level? And yes, Alex McShane is literally coming back onto this show to scold me for bringing up 28K, but it stands true to this day.
I actually like the 28K number. I've been tracking that.
Yeah, I think, well, if you look at the volume by price, that's that indicator that shows a horizontal volume instead of a volume below per candle. It shows volume per price, right? So there's a volume indicator that's on the right-hand side of the chart. That is actually showing there is massive resistance above the current price. So 28 does not show really any support for volume by price. There is kind of a gap in that section of the chart from, if we didn't hold 28K, then it would drop pretty dramatically, probably down to 24 and then down to 21 or something. So it's almost like a support of last hope or last chance is support would be 28K. And we have so far held it. So I'm pretty confident that it will, that line will hold, but it will be a tough slog to get through the price from roughly 33,000 up to 40. There is a lot of volume resistance in that band. So it will be kind of hard to get through that. It could act as resistance, and push the price back down, but we will have to see about that.
No, on the bearish side of things, if we stay sideways for a long time, I get bearish on that holding that 28K. Historically, if we grind at a number for a really long time, at some point the market falls out from under us. So I'm really hoping that the Fed pivots, whatever happens, and we can defend the line for a few more months and bounce back, because otherwise, like Ansel and Q have mentioned multiple times, there's not a whole lot between 28K and 20K.
All right, well, let's move on to the dollar. This I have a couple more currencies here. So this is slide number 6, and I will include this in the write-up and in the show notes for the podcast. Wherever you guys are listening to this, you should be able to see, or at least find a link to these slides. Now, this DXY, I zoomed it out here to include about 7 years. And what I was trying to do was show that how the dollar went from a lower kind of range between 70 and 90. And then it jumped into a new range between roughly 90 and 100 that we've been in for the last 7 years. And we just recently broke a previous high, like a multi-decade high. And so I think we're going to reprice the dollar to a new range that's going to be between 100 and 110 roughly. And so on the left-hand side, I kind of showed a square of what I think might be coming up over the next couple months is a consolidation in the dollar before it goes higher again. But I've been predicting a stronger dollar pretty much all of 2021 and even 2020 when it was coming down. But I'm still predicting a stronger dollar from here, and that is not necessarily Bitcoin bearish. Many people say the Bitcoin is a hedge against inflation, and so the dollar has to actually go down. But that's not the case, right? A stronger dollar means that there is a flight to liquidity. There is a rush towards money and towards cash. And so Bitcoin, being digital cash, will benefit from a stronger dollar, or the same conditions that make a stronger dollar. Bitcoin should and could benefit from that. So that's what I'm seeing on the dollar. A lot of people don't like the DXY. So if we go to the next slide, you can see this is a trade weighted dollar. And this is what the Fed puts out. And they, so instead of the DXY being mainly the euro and the yen, and a little bit, it's like 10% of the pound in there with the DXY, the trade weighted dollar has over 30 currencies, importantly, including the Chinese renminbi and the Mexican peso. So this is more a very broad measure of the dollar. And what you see is we do see over on the far right of the chart, a little bit of consolidation as well on the trade weighted dollar. But if we take that level 120 and we go all the way to the left, we're still at higher rates, other than the, really hardcore depths of the Corona crash. We are at higher rates than that the trade weighted dollar has been in a very long time. So this also shows a strengthening dollar, but a strengthening dollar perhaps in consolidation. So I'm kind of expecting a consolidation in the dollar over the next couple months. Any comments on the dollar before I move on to the euro?
Well, so I guess really quick, explain what a consolidation in the dollar looks like. What does that mean? And I guess, what are the implications?
Yeah, so consolidation, I use it as like basically a term that says, oh, we've gone a long distance. We need to kind of take a breather before we continue on in that trend. So we don't see a change in trend. We just see kind of a consolidation in price. So I think that the dollar will continue to strengthen, but it can't go up all at one time. As the dollar strengthens, there's a lot of pressure in the market, in credit markets and things. So you need time for people to file bankruptcy. You need time for people to default or even refinance, rollover loans, whatever they need to do. And so that kind of creates this natural timing where after an advance, then there's a consolidation, and then there's a continue on the trend. So that's what I think is going to happen in the dollar.
All right, let's jump to the euro.
All right. So this is slide number 8. And you can see the red line goes back 2 decades, back to 2020. And this was a support line, and it has broken last month. It fell pretty dramatically down to 104. It has caught a little bounce here. And if we juxtapose this with the dollar, I think we are looking at a consolidation as well in the euro, but it's not going to be a reversal. I think that we have, or the euro has many more headwinds than the dollar does. So I think the euro will continue to weaken after a period of consolidation. I'm just kind of showing this chart to match with the DXY. So this is kind of the inverse of the DXY. If we go to the next slide, it's the Hong Kong dollar. And the chart on the left is just showing this range where they are, they have a peg for the Hong Kong dollar to dollar. And it's between 7.75 and 7.85. And you can see it kind of fluctuates in there. When it's at the high end of the range, which it has been over the last couple weeks, this to me symbolizes that there is a dollar shortage in the world, and dollar strength is affecting a lot of the Far East markets. That would be China, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, Singapore, those type of places. There is dollar pressure over there. And then on the right is just a daily chart, and you can see how it has bumped right up there against that peg. It has a little bit of room right now. I think it's down, I can't really see that number, but I think it's a 7.83 or something like that. So there's a little bit of room there, but yeah, this is symbolizing that there is pressure in the currency markets and a flight to the dollar. Any comments on that, Christian?
So what happens if this peg gets broken?
Oh man, well so the way they protect the peg is they go out in the market and they will sell dollars. So they have to have dollar reserves, right? They sell dollars and buy Hong Kong dollars. If they run out of dollars to sell, that's a problem. That means it will be uncontrolled and the peg will break. Just it won't be as dramatic as like a Terra Luna peg breaking, but it could be pretty dramatic. I mean, we could see it jump to 8.5 or something like that relatively quickly. And that would just be very destructive, because a lot of, portfolios and a lot of people's investments and all that stuff are built around this peg holding. And if this peg doesn't hold, it could be disastrous, mainly for banks, I would say, in the Asian market. So Chinese banks and Japanese banks, this would be really bad if this broke. Does that answer the question?
No, totally. And I mean, it's really interesting to see, how the world economy is built on the dollar and all these dollar derivatives like the euro dollar, like the Hong Kong dollar, all these kind of things that enable the world to get access to dollars, and how a lot of that is, coming to a head with, the limitations of these systems all at the same time.
Absolutely. And diving in to a previous currency, the gold standard, I have a gold chart here, and that is showing that it's been hard to be a gold bug. Since 2011, they're still under the all-time high from back in 2011. Even though it did break the all-time high a little bit here, right now it's under that. So you've been holding gold for 11 years and you have yet to make a new high. I do expect there to be some matching consolidation here, maybe go up a little bit, 10% in the price of gold as the dollar is consolidating and things. But long-term, I am not bearish gold. I'm slightly bullish on gold, but where gold will go up 10%, Bitcoin will go up 100%. So it's just hard being a gold bug. And I thought I would put this in here for completeness. And that's all I have for currencies. Do we have time to go into commodities, or should I make that a separate show, or what?
No, let's keep it going. We got time.
All right. So next slide here. This is slide 11, and it is WTI versus Brent crude. So WTI is West Texas Intermediate. So it's the US dollar price or price of oil in the United States. And then Brent crude is a UK price. So it's European, pretty much it's European oil. And they usually track pretty closely. Brent crude is usually about 5 or 10% higher than WTI crude. But the reason why I wanted to show this was because of the European sanctions that we saw some headlines for this morning, oil sanctions against Russia. This is like their 6th round of sanctions or something. It wasn't enough on the first 5. They had to do a 6th one. And it turns out that this round of sanctions isn't even that big anyway, because it doesn't touch pipeline oil. Anyway, you can see the Brent crude, which is the orange line, actually sold off today. So even though they put on new sanctions, the price of Brent crude came down. And so I don't know. I wanted to put this in here to show that the sanctions aren't having the same effect as they once did. And actually, it went in reverse of what you would expect on the day of sanctions turning on. Some people might say, oh, well, oil, what about natural gas? So the next slide is European natural gas futures. And this is on log scale. So it was pretty bad going into late last year. It went all the way from €3, 3.65 euros back in 2020, all the way up to 220 euros. So that is a very, very significant, painful rally. But as you can see, even with the recent sanctions and all of that stuff, price is starting to come down. And over the last few weeks, natural gas futures in Europe have been trickling downward. I expect that to happen or to continue to happen. So that's what I have for energy
Ansel,
prices. Yep.
Yeah. I was asking you, if all these indicators like CPI and stuff like that are flawed, what do you actually look at? And your answer was oil. So
yeah,
kind of read the tea leaves here, and then we can jump to the next section. I think that's, this is kind of all the time we have for commodities, but I think it'd be interesting to get further analysis on what does this divergence mean? What does this trickling prices mean in the face of sanctions? What is, I guess the market kind of indicating here?
So yeah, I should have actually said this up front. My overall thesis here is that we're going to see a lot of demand destruction, and it's going to happen faster than many of the pundits are saying. Many of the pundits are saying that inflation will be sticky high, and we'll see stocks selling off in the U.S. and all that stuff. I'm pretty much taking the opposite contrarian position on all of these major calls by the macro pundits out there. I think the dollar is going to continue to strengthen. I think U.S. stocks are going to do okay. And I think demand destruction is going to hit the cost of oil and natural gas. So if the economy goes into pretty hard recession pretty quickly, the demand is going to fall a lot faster than supply. And so price will come down. So a lot of these charts are just based around that thesis that demand is going to fall faster than supply, and we're actually going to see prices drop over the next 6 months.
All right. Very, very interesting. It's going to be interesting to listeners. We're going to have to hold Ansel's feet against the fire. I think we brought this up with his bold call a few weeks ago, but he's sticking to it. We're going to have to see if this plays out. Ansel, we got a lot of stuff to talk about around, Biden and the globalists and, the Fed dynamics. Are there any charts that you think, are necessary for us to hit on beyond what we have? If not, let's get into that.
Well, I put this on the outline to talk about Biden and meeting with Powell, because really this is the big news out of the Fed this week. Other than saying, look, like Tom Luongo would say, this is Wall Street meeting with the globalists. And I tend to agree with that. So Biden is upset at Powell because Powell is not helping oil prices. He thinks that Powell should be easing, causing oil prices to come down and help the inflation numbers or whatever. And so, there's a disconnect between the globalists and Wall Street, which is symbolized by this meeting. And that's all that I was trying to bring up with this. I don't have any charts to go along with that.
Well, so let's get a little bit more into this dynamic, right? So the dynamic that you're talking about is that there are Wall Street interests. There are kind of like European WEF globalist interests, and the Fed is much more aligned with Wall Street's interests. And I guess tease out that power dynamic. Tell us a little bit more about what you think is actually happening.
Well, it's not a conspiracy theory to say that the Fed is owned by big Wall Street banks, right? So the chairman of the Federal Reserve, their primary interest is to serve moneyed interest in the United States. For many different chairmanships, going back to, I would say, Alan Greenspan and then Bernanke and Yellen, these were all people in the globalist camp. And so they would go out there and save the ECB. They would do all of these swap lines and stuff like that. They would really try to rescue the global economy. But something changed very recently, and Powell, I think, is under different direction now to play hardball with the globalists. And this is moneyed interest in the United States versus these globalists that are represented by neocons in the United States, as well as Democrats, and all of the ruling power people in power over there in the European Union. These are all globalist politicians. So that's where I see this dynamic is the globalists are trying to, with these sanctions and stuff, they're really shooting themselves in the foot. They're pushing this ESG stuff that's going to crash the economy. And so the moneyed interests in the United States are like, we've had it. We're done playing with these globalists, and we're going to take care of US first. This is another, not a MAGA thing, but it's an America first strategy that the Fed is starting to personify, I think.
All right. Well, let's continue on. I know that this is something that we've been tracking a long time here as well. But last week, there was also a pretty big meeting of these quote unquote globalists. This Davos meeting, it was very, very interesting. I noted the difference between Davos and Oslo Freedom Forum held by the Human Rights Foundation that kind of happened at the exact same time. Ansel, you have a couple of different things that you wanted to talk about from Davos. Let's jump into that.
Yeah, this is just a real quick statement here or update on what came out of Davos, because we talked last week was the history of Davos. So we went through a lot of that history. If you guys haven't seen that episode, you guys can go back and check that out, as well as 2 episodes ago with Tom Luongo. We talked a lot about Davos. But so this is just kind of to close the loop on this. The big story I saw that was in relation to the Bitcoin industry, at least over the last couple of days, was that a bunch of these big banks said that they're on a panel, and they said that they see a CBDC replacement for SWIFT coming within 5 years. I think it's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what CBDCs do. They're not a replacement. SWIFT is just a messaging system. So I think it's funny that the one big headline that I saw coming out about CBDCs is just a complete misunderstanding of what a CBDC is, what Swift is. It's almost like they're reaching out and they're trying to come up with a narrative for a reason to pursue CBDCs. And so that was the main headline there. The other headline that I thought was interesting in relation to macro, because I think the biggest macro story that's affecting a lot of these commodity prices and a lot of the consumer confidence and inflation expectations and all of that right now is the war in Ukraine. Henry Kissinger, very famous politician from the United States, going back to Nixon and all of that. He came out and said that Ukraine should sue for peace, that we should just end this and get this over with. Ukraine is lost. There's no reason to continue down this road. And that really kind of exploded a lot of people's narratives about this. And it made people think that perhaps the end of this market disruption is close. So I just wanted to bring up those two things out of Davos. Do you have any comments or any favorite stories that you saw out of Davos?
I want to dive into the Kissinger thing a little bit more. I mean, I guess before we do that, let's talk about CBDCs. On this show, we've been talking about how CBDCs are really not going to be that big of a deal. I doubt that they're really going to ship in any meaningful way. Like, obviously, China is doing tests with a large portion of their population, but in terms of like these things actually becoming adopted, we've been skeptical here. We definitely are much more bullish on the idea of dollar stable coins proliferating and becoming very, very relevant. We've been very skeptical of CBDCs. So again, it's interesting to see the Davos crew, the globalists, talking and continue to push CBDCs. Europe is grasping for air, grasping for straws with the CBDC narrative and the CBDC, the Euro CBDC. But ultimately, again, like you said, they're just looking for a reason to continue to pursue this, and the only reason that these things exist is to surveil. That's the only reason that a CBDC is better than the existing system, is that it gives them the ability to surveil more than they can right now, potentially. Going on to Kissinger and Davos, like I want to tease that out a little bit more. Like, can you kind of mentioned the fact that Kissinger was a big part of foreign policy with Nixon, but you kind of failed to mention that he was integral in establishing the Eurodollar system and the deal with the Saudis to support the dollar and tether it to oil. This is someone who has impacted all of our lives in an enormous way, every person on the planet. So when they're coming out and they're speaking about the situation in Ukraine, like what's the weight of that? And like, I guess, so like, what can we read from that other than, maybe that indicates that people can, I guess I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, I mean, Kissinger is super well respected. And one thing that I've noticed over the last, I would say 5 years, going through coronavirus and into the current crisis that we're seeing today, there is a lack of statesmanship. There's a lack of leadership in a lot of these situations, and there's also just a lack of planning. The EU seems to be lashing out in many directions in sanctions and other things of seizing money that's held in Western banks for Russia. I mean, they're just lashing out. There doesn't seem to be a very well thought out plan. And Kissinger is kind of the opposite of that. Okay. He is a very long-term thinker, very big planner. He sees the big picture better than the current generation of statesmen out there. And so when he says this, I think it really shook a lot of people. It shook a lot of people thinking that what is the direction they're going to take on Russia, and what's the end of this war? Because people like von der Leyen from Europe, they said, we're going to fight to the last Ukrainian. Well, now Kissinger's coming out and saying, oh, maybe we should think about wrapping this up sooner rather than later. And that makes a lot of people take note of, what the situation is and maybe make different plans for the future. Instead of thinking oil is going to continue to go up, maybe we already have seen the top of the oil price. And if this Russia-Ukraine situation wraps up sooner rather than later, perhaps oil will come down. So that is a lot of, I think, what's going on here. That's why I thought it was important. Oh, you're muted.
I think that these are really good. This is really good information that you're kind of bubbling up, and something that's not part of the headlines, but definitely something that listeners need to keep an eye on. Kind of getting on to, again, what I mentioned at the beginning, the difference between Oslo and Davos. It was really interesting to see the alignment of, let's call it, the VC backed altcoin DeFi establishment and their presence at Davos, and then on the contrary, the Bitcoin focus at the Oslo Freedom Forum, a forum that's talking about how to give dissidents freedom and how to enable them and relieve them from totalitarians. And then on the flip side, Davos is a conversation about how to control people, how to keep them in a box, and how to make sure that they fit in within a specific agenda that's being top down and centrally dictated. Ansel, I guess, have you been kind of focusing on that? And what is that? I guess, what does that say more about this difference between Bitcoin and crypto?
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that for years and years. That has been the main one of the main criticisms of altcoins, is that they are scams that are in need of kind of regulator protection in a way. I think that kind of very well shows that being at Davos, they are reaching out, trying to make friends with the regulators, where Bitcoin doesn't need to do that. Bitcoin says, I am a fundamental change in technology and culture, and my time has come. And so that's the way Bitcoin kind of looks at the world, where these altcoins are reaching out there to get regulator support. I think this really showed up a lot in recent comments by Vitalik. Actually, I don't know how deep you want to get into this, but he went out on Twitter and had this big long thread about contradictions in his mind between what he wants Ethereum to be and what he thinks it will be. And by the end of that thread, I was like, man, he is just really wanting to court some government to pick him up. And maybe that is the European Central Bank, maybe that's some other central bank, but I think he wants to become a CBDC for one of these big central banks.
Interesting. So you see Ethereum being subsumed by some central bank. I mean, the narrative there is that central banks and countries will be massive stakers in the Ethereum blockchain under proof of stake, which is, I kind of find that to be a hilarious narrative. Although, we do expect that nation states will be mining Bitcoin as well and holding Bitcoin as treasury. So not many people are predicting the downfall of nation states completely here. But yeah, I mean, I read that thread. I read a lot into it. I thought it was very interesting. And, the contradiction I find right now with Ethereum is that Ethereum cannot become more quote unquote Bitcoiny, like Vitalik coined it in the actual thread, unless Vitalik leaves. But at the same time, Vitalik can't realize his vision for the protocol unless he stays. So that is the stick there, and that's where I think there is a lack of hope there for that ecosystem in terms of achieving the decentralization that we enjoy, on Bitcoin and at Bitcoin. Ansel, I think that's the end of what we got here. Any last words that you want to talk about for this show?
Well, I have a couple more charts. Maybe I'll, expand on a different post on Bitcoin Magazine in future days. So be watching out for that, or I could put it out on Twitter, or both. So be watching out for things like the Baltic Dry Index and freight rates, and what we can learn from those things, because I think that's very interesting when you look at the cost to ship steel, or the cost to ship one of those 40-foot containers, and perhaps what we can see or learn by looking at those charts. So be watching out for that. And that's it, man. Thanks for having me back on the live stream, and good to have you back, Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. Y'all don't forget to follow Ansel on Twitter at Ansel Lindner. Make sure to go check out Bitcoin and Markets, his amazing newsletter. I know I got everyone who is hosting these live streams hooked on Bitcoin and Markets, and I've been a big fan for 4 or 5 years now. And you guys can follow me at CK_Snarks. We stream these live every single Tuesday. We drop them as a podcast and an article on Bitcoin Magazine every single Wednesday. So keep up with the latest in macro. Check out FedWatch. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast feed and keep tuning in. Thanks so much for joining us.
What is up, guys? We are back. I'm pissed. I'm not going to share too much, but if you see racist Trudeau trending on Twitter, feel free to join the party. I'm going to make this go viral because Justin Trudeau is a racist bigot. But I digress. We're detracting from real, legitimate news. I believe, I want to make sure I'm citing where we got this chart, but this was a fun little win, I think. I posted it on my personal Twitter account, but the Block report, Block Square, Jack Dorsey, huge fan of the company, the work they do, put out a very interesting report where one of the charts they shared was just talking to random people and throwing out names of various cryptocurrencies and like who's aware of this cryptocurrency. And of the people that they polled, 88% of respondents claim to have heard about Bitcoin. The next closest cryptocurrency was Ethereum at 43%. That means awareness was twice as much for Bitcoin than Ethereum at large. I mean, hey, we're just flexing right now. We're just like, you know, doing some victory laps. Ethereum's down, so we're gonna keep kicking them while they're down on the ground.
Gotcha.
Let me know how Ethereum 2.0 goes. What's up, Alex?
Hey.
Hey, Alex, you want to mute yourself so we can continue being live on air? Thank you, buddy. I like, I think we're going to start to see, I think this is going to be a precursor to a lot of conversations that we've started to see trickle in Bitcoin Twitter around the idea that, hey, Ethereum is a shitcoin. It's no different than all these other things. And like Bitcoiners are really going after Vitalik and Ethereum right now, but we don't even need to. Like this chart validates what we've long believed, which Bitcoin is the best, and everything else is truly just try to make up a second place trophy for them to get. That's really what's going on in altcoin land. My last tidbit from this chart that I know we're not sharing it with you, I'm making an excuse for you to go out there and give me a follow on Twitter, Q_like the letter, shamelessly plugging, but they listed, and maybe I'm just going to be a moron, but aren't XRP and Ripple the same thing? Chris, P.
No, I believe,
Go ahead.
no. So there is the company, and then there is the token, and they're two different things. There's also like different ways of. I don't care enough to like understand the nuances, but there's like different type. There's like I think there's like two different ways of using XRP, but XRP is the token, Ripple is the company.
Yeah, it's Ripple Labs particularly. It's Ripple for short, but a lot of times people confuse the two for exactly that reason. Like Ripple runs XRP.
Got it. So it's like Binance USA and then the Binance token itself.
Yes.
Two separate things, but same. Cool.
But
Well,
but importantly, both things are absolute horseshit and garbage.
of course,
They
both are cancer.
All of them are. All of them are, no doubt. I just thought it was really funny that on this chart that Block had published, it goes Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, Binance Coin, then they say Ripple, Tether, then XRP. So Ripple has more awareness than XRP. I guess based on this differentiation, I guess that makes sense. To me, honestly, I've just treated them as one and the same because they both just seem, it all just feels shady and sketchy.
It is super shady and sketchy. They basically like paid, it's a story as old as time. They paid like entities to like put their name places, and then they were like, see, this giant bank is using XRP, and it was all horseshit, and it still is horseshit, and it's they're a tick on the back of the only thing that matters, which is Bitcoin.
That's like what the WEF does. They'll like email a company and they'll be like, hey, we don't want to work, like, we don't want any association. They're like, see, we collaborated. They sent us an email. They responded. We
That is
collaborated.
exactly correct.
Like, and it's like, no, we want off the website. It's like, you responded again. It's dual collaboration. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, you respond and you're like, die in a fire. And they're like, see, we're in a dialogue. It's a constructive conversation.
We're in negotiations of the deal. They've rejected the deal 8 times. Thoughts right now on, I'm going to say the bad word on the show, price. We're seeing Bitcoin pump to 31K right now, I believe. P, what's the block clock say? 31 something.
31,945.
How we feeling? Is the bear market over? Is this a pump fake? Like, should I start going leverage longs, asking for a friend? Meanwhile, I do have my BitMEX account up through a different country because BitMEX is not available in this country.
Hugh, I think you answered your own question. You should have went leverage long at 28K. If you got to put your money where your mouth is, if you said it's going to keep bouncing, you got to put it on there.
No, I have my leverage order just in case. Like,
Do not use leverage, my friends. You will get fucked. But having said that,
let me rephrase. I'm keeping the cash line of my credit card like fully open right now so that if and when it goes down to like 20K, we're just going to max out Papa's credit cards for a little bit. It's going to be scary, but it's okay.
hey, you do what you got to do, man. I think the only form of leverage that is acceptable is 69x leverage, maybe 69,420, but that's kind of it. No, man. I mean, look, the price is, in my personal opinion, the price is mostly noise, right? It's a signal for a lot of people, but for me, the thing that's really exciting about Bitcoin is the opportunity, as I've said many times on the show, to free ourselves from this fiat mindset. We are educated and kind of forced to embrace this high time preference mindset by our culture, and Bitcoin represents this way to opt out of that in a really important way. And so for me, obviously no one likes to, see their net worth, halved over a period of time, or whatever portion they have in Bitcoin. I wouldn't know. I lost all mine in a boating accident. It was tragic. There was a jet ski involved, a shark. It was hideous. Anyway, the point is, if I did have any Bitcoin, no one likes to see that. However, my only personal reaction is, and maybe this is because I'm an insane person, I think as many of us are, but I'm not like, oh no, Bitcoin is over. My only thought is like, fuck, I could have bought more with the same, shitcoin. That is to say USD. USD is the best shitcoin in my opinion. The United States dollar. But other than that, man, it's noise. So if you're asking like trading terms, I think this is probably a bull trap. It's going to like go up a little bit, then it's going to go down a little bit, then it's going to go up a little bit, then it's going to trade sideways a little bit, then it's going to go up a little bit, then it's going to go up a bunch of bit. But on what time scale that happens, who the fuck knows?
Sorry, I was just figuring out how to get access to all of P's lost Bitcoin and make them my own.
Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this price movement is the perfect example of shut up, zoom out, like set your DCA and like go outside. Like you lack vitamin D, you pasty looking pleb. I see you. Not really. I don't actually see you, but like I see you. Don't overthink this. Like it's smooth sailing right now. This is what we were waiting for. We were waiting for the cheap sats. We were waiting for like everyone to start looking elsewhere, paying attention to everyone else, so that we can really develop, do the work, onboard en masse. And, I don't want to misquote, but I'm trying to find the news out of Panama because they are really trying to turn into like another hub for Bitcoin. We're seeing a lot out of Central America where I want to phrase it very interestingly, because we also saw reports from the Bitcoin conference, like small nation state type locations like the island in Portugal are starting to adopt Bitcoin. P, when or where do you think the next full-blown legal tender Bitcoin mic drop will be?
Oof, that is a tough one. I think it's going to be another. I think it's likely to be another South American country. I think that countries that are under the boot heel of the United States dollar are uniquely poised and have experienced significant inflation, are uniquely poised to understand the value of Bitcoin as a national currency. But which one it's going to be specifically, I couldn't tell you, man.
I want to be able to pull up this clip and be like, you were so wrong. Like, how dumb were you to just like off of no factual context or information, just blindly pick Brazil when in fact it was so clearly always going to be Argentina. Actually, it's like almost at this point, almost impossible for Argentina to do it.
Yeah. I mean, look,
which like no one talks about. Like we talked about it for a little bit, but like how absurd is it that the IMF just was like, we'll give you this money, like we'll help you out, but like you have to pass laws being like no more Bitcoin, no more cryptocurrency, don't do any of that stuff, but we'll help you. We put
I mean, they're fucking terrified. And also, I mean, the IMF is just the worst thing ever. It's literally it's like a bunch of people got together and they were like, how can we extort these poorer countries, offering them just insane loan terms, because what the fuck else are they going to do? And it's fucking awful. Read the history of the IMF. It's atrocious. Anyway, the point is, I mean, Bitcoin, there's that great quote, I think it was Lagarde, said like pretty recently, like, if there is an exit door, like people will take it. Like we have to close the exits and prevent people from exiting the system. Like, people can't be allowed to leave. And like literally that's they're doing absolutely everything that they can to disincentivize people from acquiring this, to getting in the lifeboat. Because if you get in the lifeboat, that is to say Bitcoin, then these decentralized systems, decentralized banking systems can't extort you, and they need that liquidity in their own systems. And so when you step outside of the system, that's bad news. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that they're like, yeah, we'll give you this money, this play money, and the only thing we ask, the only thing is that you promise that you'll never ever give access to your people to Bitcoin. I think we're going to see more and more and more of that. What?
Yeah, P, after you saying that just, like when you said that again, it's like, I know I've heard her say it, but it's like giving an arson serial killer. It's like, oh yeah, so we've given you locks and chains for the doors. Once you put this building on fire, that the people can't escape. Like, that's so crazy how that sounds, just like the way that you said it. Yeah, Q, I think there's something you wanted to add.
Well, I don't want to add to this. I kind of want to have a conversation that could very well like have our channel rocked yet again, but we haven't talked about it on this show, and I'm just going to present it, and I'll probably get reamed, ripped apart, but like it's worthy, it's newsworthy, it's a topic of conversation in the Bitcoin community.
Bro, if you bring up lizard people again.
No, like I kind of want to have like a serious conversation for a second about gun control, because we're seeing Justin Trudeau right now start to pass forward legislation like essentially banning certain guns. We went through a horror, like truly a horrible incident down in Texas with some of these families, and the way this gunman just killed like children, not like children, innocent children who believe in fucking Santa Claus died. Like, that doesn't sit well with me personally. And I don't know a solution. Like, I've reached out to a lot of Bitcoiners who I know are like big gun people, and I'm like, I'm so lost, because I hold in my head genuinely both sides of the argument. Like, this is a country that was founded on the basis that we had guns. To take that right away is fundamentally un-American. I fully hold that belief true. I also fully fucking believe there is no rhyme or reason a human being should just have on hand, whenever they so feel like, a magazine with 50 fucking bullets that can be shot out in less than a minute.
Here, time out. Q, are you a gun owner?
No.
Okay.
I've actually never shot a gun.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll chime in here. Someone, and this is not something that I tell many people, but I've shot guns growing up. And I currently don't own any myself, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tragic thing. I think there's one thing that's pretty like, when you're looking at the past and things that have happened, a lot of times, and this is not to blame any one person, but like a lot of times it says a lot of these shootings are from people that have kind of broken homes. So, what's it say about someone's home life, and how do we fix that? Like, how do you keep people in not broken homes? So that's kind of part of the argument. And then a second thing is that since the 90s, the FBI, and not to get like my tinfoil hat on, but like, it seems they're in communication or grooming people, whatever you want to call it. And that's something that's hard to check. It's not like you just call the FBI or they're willing to give up information on that. But it seems that either they get in these, I don't want to say alt-right group, but like these crazy Discord servers or crazy Reddit pages about like people promoting things to do. And I don't know why they would do that. Part of me thinks it's a form of control, but yeah, those are just the two things that I've kind of been looking at a lot about it. And I think mental health is part of it. I don't know if giving people drugs is a way to solve that mental health crisis. But yeah, it's definitely an issue of, I'd say, broken homes. I definitely say people with mental issues getting a hold of weapons that shouldn't. I guess Q or P, if any thoughts there.
There we go. I'm trying to call up there's a great Twitter thread about this. I think that pontificating on this stuff without having hard data is challenging, if not dangerous. But what I will say is, I think that gun violence is dramatically misrepresented in the United States. There are some facts from Andrew C. Follett on Twitter. He has a great thread talking about this, but some random fact. Although events in the U.S. tend to get the lion's share of media exposure, mass shootings are clearly a worldwide issue. The U.S. makes up about 1.15% of the world's mass shootings, while having almost 5% of the world's population. Out of 97 countries with data, the U.S. is 64th in frequency of mass shootings and 65th in murder rate. 4 times as many per capita died in mass shootings in France as in the U.S., 21 times that in Norway. In addition to those fairly nice nations, Finland, Germany, Israel, Italy, Spain, and Switzerland have higher mass shootings death rates. There's like a lot of stats you can go on and on and on. I haven't personally verified those specific stats myself, but he has the citations in there, and I know other people that have. Again, this is an issue of misrepresentation. A lot of the logic that is cited around this issue, in my opinion, makes no sense. Like, the majority of gun deaths are not caused by assault rifles. They're caused by handguns, but like nobody even talks about like any of that stuff. And that's totally separate from the fact that, as you said, Chris, I think this is really a mental health issue rather than a like specific type of gun being banned or not banned issue. It's all just publicity and people trying to get reelected and people trying to specifically leverage, bathos and pathos and tug on your heartstrings to generate a specific outcome separate from actual details, facts, logic behind it.
I have a solution, and it's not a joke. I think if we banned public schools, it would take care.
I saw guys, Guy Swan had a commentary on exactly that, and I thought it was a very fascinating solution. Like, I'm a big believer that like school choice should be a thing. That like, hey, if 20,000 fucking parents want to send their kids, both kids, so you're talking 40K kids, all get sent to one school because that is the best school, and then you have to create whatever system it becomes to get into this school, but that school is going to get the most funding because that school, for whatever reason, is churning out the best product and more people want to go there. And then you start to create a competitive cycle. But this, like, let's throw it against the wall and like, oh, some kids can go to private school and like, well, I do agree, but I don't buy the it's going to stop mass shootings. I don't. So like, that's where it loses me.
Hold on. We don't represent mass shootings accurately, as P said. I mean,
Bingo.
there's mass shootings in Chicago every weekend that nobody's talking about. Outside of that, like I do think rethinking the public school system is very important. I think we don't allow schools to fail in this country, and that's a problem. We don't allow teachers to fail or be let go, and that's a huge problem. Having worked in public schools, there's no learning going on there. There's nothing. It's just daycare for kids. All of America's youth is just in a daycare
we saw
on
that
their
with
phone.
COVID. Public school system is just a daycare system so that they can send more people off to the workforce. That's
and if you want to get an education, you have to, you have to seek other alternatives. Be a self-starter. Maybe you go get this kind of country club experience at a university for a couple years and get some education under your belt. But anyway, back to the gun question. I would just recommend Q, go learn about one as a tool, learn how to use one and draw your own conclusions. I just think it's helpful. I think a lot of people have a lot of really visceral reactions to guns without understanding how they work or why someone like me owns them. Even though I hope never to have to use it.
I started this by saying that I do believe that like gun ownership is a fundamental right of Americans. Like that, I do not want to take away. I understand and I respect that. I do, however, like I get lost when we hear the reports of fucking cops sitting outside.
Yeah, but that's a different. But that's a totally.
I do believe like we should have deeper background checks, but like, what does that look like? Why can't we have like there? Wait.
So here's the thing.
Layers.
You have to step further back because again, the entire frame. I also own handguns, and I go shooting somewhat regularly. I used to go a lot more, and I grew up in a family where shooting regularly was part of the culture. But you got to look at the data because the entire frame is completely wrong. I'm just going to read a few more stats from this that I think are very telling. So, the U.S. is 64th in the world in terms of mass shootings rates per capita. The highest gun ownership state with the loosest gun laws in the nation is Wyoming, where 59.7% of households have a gun. Wyoming gun laws are arguably the least restrictive in the United States. Wyoming does not have a gun homicide problem, with a rate of only 1.4 per 100,000, actually lower than that right across the border in more gun-controlled Canada, and only about a third of that of the nation as a whole. The highest murder rate of any jurisdiction in the U.S. is Washington, D.C., which has a murder rate of 21.8 per 100,000, more than 20 times that of most European countries. But D.C. also has the most restrictive gun laws in the country and the lowest rates of legal gun ownership, with numbers less than in many European states. The data seems to suggest
these numbers. What? No, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you because with Wyoming, you're talking about a state that has the smallest per capita, and you have the most amount of national park land that people don't live on. So a lot of that land actually just isn't put to use. Jackson doesn't actually have as high of a population as like most other major cities for individual states, and yet that is the largest populated city in that state. I've lived in DC, and I can tell you, like, living in DC, like, there are some parts that are fucking sketch. But again, like, the reverse side of that, where you have a very condensed population in a small location all of a sudden on top of one another, there's a lot of transplants in DC as well. So those numbers, like, they read like exactly like those jurisdictions would be. You have large, wide swaths of land in Wyoming where people don't congregate a lot. But whereas with DC, you have a really like on top of each other. Everyone's going to like 5 or 6 different parts of DC.
That may be that actually, that's potentially a valid point. If we separate that out, and I don't mean to move the goalposts, but you can just go through and look at some of the most like violent cities in the United States, and the most violent cities seem to have the strictest gun control laws. And that would be opposite of what you'd expect if creating gun restrictions had the effect that it is promoted as having.
I don't buy into the narrative that like if you make more laws, people don't do it. Like, dude, I fucking smoked weed when weed was illegal. Like I'm like making a law saying you can't do this doesn't stop people from doing it. But I do think having some sort of steps or procedures like that friction, I do think there needs to be more friction in the process of gun ownership.
But do you know the process now? There's quite a bit of friction. In California, it's very difficult to purchase.
It's very difficult, I know. But I don't have to go through as extensive, like I don't need a psych eval. But like, let me tell you, I should not have a fucking gun. But like, I don't need a psych eval.
It's most of the kind of guns that you're thinking about aren't even available in California.
No, I know. I've gone over this with like, I have a friend in Utah who's like literally showed me how to set up a gun. We had a long conversation about this. He was like, dude, you can't even like go to California. You can't go back to LA with the gun you're holding in your hand. Like, I've had degrees in exposure to this. I respect both sides of the argument, and I genuinely sit like stuck in the middle, unable to, in my own mind, take a side or stance on this, because I do agree with both sides of the argument.
Yeah, I would just say you can't make an informed opinion on it without having used the tool. It doesn't mean you have to go around, in concealed carry for a year. But I mean, I would recommend just shooting a gun, taking one apart, cleaning one, taking a course. I think education would help people. But I don't know, man. In this crazy world with the government making increasingly like very strange dictator-like moves in our country and neighboring countries, it's like you just can't. Being unarmed is just not a realistic option, in my mind. Not at all.
I also think, like, again, like, we all just need to understand like the actual facts on the ground. Now, again, I was reading somebody else's summary of a lot of these issues. Some of those things are going to be extremely biased, some of them are not, but I think everyone needs to actually go and like review the real data as opposed to what is being presented, and review it from multiple sources. Go find some very articulate, facts-based, or what appears to be facts-based people that are pro-gun ownership. Go find some that appear to be fact-based that are anti-gun ownership, and then form your own conclusions. But I think repeating literally what I just did. I just went through and repeated some of these specific facts from somebody else. But I think that becomes very, very dangerous, especially around this issue, because again, I think that the frame that is being pushed onto us is fundamentally broken and intentionally broken.
And like, to
Yeah,
be
there's
honest,
a
the reason
great-
I've sat with this for so long is like I kind of pee, like one of the things you alluded to at the very beginning, like the convenience of timing of this is really annoying me. And like the truth is, what happened was there were a bunch of fucking shootings that happened, but they waited until like there was the splashiest one that was going to pull the emotional heartstrings the most, and that's the one that the media has been hammering home. But there was a shooting in Buffalo that you're not seeing circulated around Instagram or social medias. There was another shooting, I believe, in South Carolina, was it? But
Yeah, they happen every week, man.
I hear you that you want to go back to Bitcoin, but like we're having a conversation about freedom. I'm going to put my foot down and say this is a conversation about freedom and so valid to have within the context of Bitcoin.
Well,
Because,
listen,
like,
do you want to
what-
outsource your defense mechanism to the government and just trust them 100%? No, we're fucking Bitcoiners. You verify that shit. You take it upon yourself to be responsible for yourself and the defense of yourself and your family. And you can't do that realistically without guns. You just can't. Especially as our bodily autonomy gets stripped away day by day by big pharma and the US government. Like, you have to have some recourse. And for us, unfortunately, the hill to die on is literally, do I own a gun? Or whether you make it legal or not, I don't care. But the guns are already out there. I mean,
I think it's more than that, though. To your point, it's like this is just one axis of this much larger and very important conversation, which is radical personal responsibility, right? Like, I actually think of like holding your own private keys and educating oneself about like how to safely do that and the factors involved. It's like gun ownership. Like, you got to hold your own keys, not your coin. You are literally waiting to get fully cucked by fucking whatever exchange you have your coins on if you do not take personal accountability for your finances in Bitcoin, right? Owning a gun and knowing how to use a gun is the same way. If you have a gun, you have to take full responsibility for knowing how to safely operate it, how to check to see if it is armed or unarmed, or whether loaded or unloaded, and everything in between, how to clean a gun, all those things. I honestly, I think they're very, very similar. And I think this goes back to kind of like the nanny culture that we see a lot in our more and more and more around the world, but certainly in this country. Like, I think that, I mean, we live in an extremely litigious society, and I think that's a problem. But I think it all kind of runs in the same general theme, which is like the government and people trying to tell you like you aren't smart enough to be able to take accountability for your own safety, whether that's financial or physical or emotional or whatever it is. And I think that it makes us very, very fragile the more we accept that as a culture. And I don't want to have that right taken away from me. I certainly hold myself fully responsible for the things that I can and decide to do.
yeah, if, I don't know, chickenpox 2.0, something rolls out and they go door to door with vaccines. Like, I mean, there will come a point where like our bodily autonomy will be on the line again. And like, what is your last
Monkeypox.
recourse there? Yeah, something. I don't know.
Um,
Anyway, I
monkeypox
agree with
is
you. I
real.
think yeah, I'm sure. I think it's an important part of being a Bitcoiner is considering, your security, defense mechanisms, and guns are a question that everyone has to grapple with, especially in the States. How are you going to approach it? But I would recommend everybody try it. I mean, you can only learn so much from a book. If you've never shot a gun, go have that experience and see what you think after.
I will report back after I go hunting for the first time.
You don't have to kill anything.
Yeah, you don't even have to go hunting.
No,
We can take you to a place that you don't
I
have
think,
to kill
I think
anything.
you guys, I think, are assuming that I'm much more left leaning on this issue than I actually am. Like, I truly, for myself, I've just been stuck in this middle ground area for years now with an inability to further extend into either side. Like that's just my own where I'm stuck, and I definitely still have a lot more to uncover about this. But like conversations like this, and like the random people I DM'd being like, dude, I like walk me through this in your head, like no judgment here, just like where is your head at and why? Just because like the variety of perspectives is how I think I'm going to better understand what priorities of different people in different parts of the country are. But I don't know.
Q, we get it. You're soft as shit. It's cool. You know, you got those soft hands.
Yeah, I would just point out that people who want to hurt people find a way. You know, if you're Barack Obama, you use a drone. If you're somebody, you know, people driving vans through crowds, knife crime in other countries, like people who want to hurt people find a way, man. It's unfortunate, but I don't really think it's a gun's fault. Anyway.
Well, on
A
that
chicken
note,
in every pot and a flamethrower in every house.
Yeah.
let's end on a higher note. Let's do a live stack because Bitcoin is at 31,600. Alex is looking at me like, dude, I don't have any dry powder.
I also don't have any dry
Yeah, I don't
powder.
have any dry powder either.
Am I the only one who actually like has USD to like function in society right now?
Yeah, dude.
I'm trying to travel, dude. I'm not trying to spend money on Bitcoin right now.
Yo, did Alex McShane just say that he doesn't like Bitcoin? I think he just said he doesn't like Bitcoin, guys.
That's what I heard.
What shitcoin have you been spinning up now?
The USD
You
for
leave the
There's
show
just
for 2
dollars. The
weeks and
Bitcoin has
shitcoining?
just been dollars. Yeah.
Wow. He's
No,
a
no, no,
dollar
no.
maxi, guys. You heard it here first.
You
Alex
gotta-
McShane, formerly known as Brian Armstrong. No
You got to
longer a
be
Bitcoin
able to
maxi.
diversify your education, including traveling, experiencing new things, finding new places where you can use Bitcoin, educating about Bitcoin, traveling with Bitcoin. These are all important parts of the Bitcoin journey.
Well, I'm the
Yep,
proud
thank you.
owner
Yep.
of 17,500 more sats. So
Damn. I'm gonna find that transaction in my mempool. I'm gonna find your wallet queue. And I'm gonna watch
He
it.
didn't ship it
I'm
over.
gonna put your wallet on my blue wallet and just watch it every day.
Q, wait, real talk. Tell me you have your own keys.
He's working on it.
wait, what do you mean? Like Coinbase just keeps all my Bitcoin safe, right? Dude,
Oh,
yes,
we
I
got
have
him
my-
a wallet at the conference.
Whoa.
Hopefully it wasn't an
Time.
Oculus.
I had a wallet.
Yeah, we got him on
before that.
Oculus.
I had a wallet before the conference. I did snag one of the like nice
Q. Bro, we got to
gold
fix this shit
Oculus
stat.
wallets. I have a cold card. Like Alex is just trolling me live on air. I just have too much KYC Bitcoin, and I want to start by KYC free Bitcoin and use my cold card for that.
I know
Well,
a
you
guy.
gotta.
I know a guy.
We just gotta get all your Bitcoin in cold storage. Period. I think.
No,
Not we,
I
but you.
the
Or
rest
you
of my
already do
Bitcoin
that?
is in cold storage. You're failing to grasp that. Like I
Okay.
do have. I don't use the best wallet in that capacity, but it is a cold
Don't give people
storage
ideas.
wallet.
You got the majority of your Bitcoin in cold storage. Good. That's all I needed to hear.
My keys, my
He's like,
coin.
it's right here on my phone.
Look at my Bitcoin balance.
A nice Indian man sent me a thing to use this private key to store it on my phone.
I mean, to be honest with you, right now, what I'm trying to do is like I'm trying to get the Bitcoin on my mom's phone off and like set her up on a wallet. So that's a really fun endeavor for me being as technologically inept as I am. Just imagine my mother. So it's a
I got
really
this.
fun.
I got multi-sig in a bag.
No shit.
I bought a bunch of cold cards and set up a multi-sig for my mom and hand it off to her when she gets here. It's
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Help your mom's Bitcoin. That's the takeaway from today's episode. Make sure your mom has some Bitcoin so that she can beat it to you.
So she can celebrate 40K when you helped her get in at 65K.
We've all been there.
That's a wrap, guys. Stay humble, stack sats. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow.
My final thoughts. Oh, we're already gone. We're not
We're
going.
good.
live.
Keep going.
All right. If you want to watch an interesting nature show, I love watching like crazy nature shows where it's like, oh, this ant can carry 50 times its weight in whatever. Anyway, go watch Prehistoric Planet with David Attenborough. It's all about
Great.
dinosaurs, and it is the CGI is astoundingly good. And I know a lot. I don't know a lot. I know a fair amount about dinosaurs. Growing up as a child, like most people, most young males, I was obsessed with them for a while. There were many scenes in this show where I was like, holy fucking shit. Also, it's like the most bleeding edge science. Go check it out. It's a good time. Also, they have multiple gratuitous scenes of dinosaurs fucking. So, just like unnecessary, like T-Rex is like making weird noises and stuff. And that's hilarious as well. Some good meme material. That's all I got, my friends. Let's call it a show.
Yeah. I hope the image of a T-Rex and a Triceratops having sex is not haunting your brain the way it is mine.
No, that wouldn't make sense. They'd never do that. It's a T-Rex on T-Rex.
No,
You want to see the clip? You can go on my Twitter. It's like the third thing down. I definitely recorded the whole thing and then posted it to Twitter. It's worth a watch.
Chris, cut our mics. before we say something.